I think we're live. So this is the February 2nd, 2015 episode of the Every Second Matters chat or podcast. And we've got some links out there. We'll see who joins up. Maybe this is a little bit too early. We only had a couple people show up today, but we'll see if other people show up. We did have a guest scheduled who I guess must have had other plans because he didn't reply to our invites or our links or anything. So it's possible he'll still show up. But we've got a couple of things we can talk about. It is February 2nd, as I mentioned, which is when we do these chats, but this one is a different than some of the others because it's the second anniversary of Chris Kyle's death. We might want to mention that. And being February the second month, the second day of the second month, 2/2, is a good time to think about Mission 22, which is another awareness campaign similar to ours, but obviously a lot more. Well, maybe not obviously, but a lot more. They have a lot more going on, but with an important mission, and that's to bring awareness to the fact that 22 veterans take their own lives every day in this country. So thought we might mention those, and we can talk about those as the chat goes on. We'll be watching the comments over on YouTube where we record this in a live Google Plus Hangout, and then it gets turned into a podcast, which we put out on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. So if you're listening to this in the future, this is you can find out more information about everything we're going to be talking about at everysecondmatters.com. And if you're listening now on YouTube or over on Gun Channels, feel free to leave comments. And if you want a link, let us know. On YouTube, it's a little bit tougher. I'm not sure how to send links over there, so if you want to drop an email in it, I can just email you the link. Or if you're on Gun Channels and you want to join, let us know. So we got DB Cooper and we've got Dr. No. And
Hello.
Where do you guys want to start?
You want to start about Mission 22? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, have you heard of that before?
No, not till today, because of the Instagram folks. I saw it on Instagram a bunch.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it's well, like I said, it's just an awareness campaign to bring light to the fact that so many veterans are committing suicide. You think that's I mean, I don't know. It's not something I've really looked into. It's disheartening to hear that statistic, but obviously it has a lot of implications. I don't know what the result would be. I mean, obviously the trauma or the stuff they have to deal with or they're forced to deal with is what causes it, but I don't know what if it's a lack of doctors or if it's just lack of education before the fact. Yeah, it's hard to say.
The VA needs more funding or better leadership.
Well, it might have something, I mean, I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but it might have something to do with the fact that the kind of people that are willing to put it all out there for others aren't the kind of people that are going to go ask for help either. I mean, I think I understand that. So it could be tough, I suppose. So I guess I don't know what there is to say about it. Like, say, I'm no representative for the operation. If I would have been on a little bit more on the ball, I probably could have tried to schedule somebody who knows more about it to come on or talk about it. So feel free if you're out there and you know more about it, jump in or leave us some links or some comments in the feedback in the comments, and we'll relay it. But obviously, like I say, it's tragic to see that, or I think that many people are out there having troubles.
Yeah, I don't know if they were selling patches. That money went to charity. I don't know or that is the charity, Mission 22. And
I'm not sure. Like I said, I know they call it an awareness campaign, and I think one of the things you can do for this particular thing is not necessarily do anything financially as much as just think about somebody you might know. When they say 22 veterans, they don't necessarily, I think my mind jumps to young guys who are coming back from the desert, right? But that we have the older folks too, veterans of, well, you name it. And they've seen all kinds of horrible things and dealt with it in different ways. Different generations had different ways of dealing with things. And as you get older and, you've got, I guess, bleaker look at the future, maybe. You know what I'm saying? It could be some of these older guys that are adding to that, guys and gals that are adding to that number. So
you have a full spectrum, and you also have a, for lack of a better expression, a group of people with an extreme set of circumstances that drove them to that place. And you're right. I mean, for a large part, they are proud people, full of honor, and they don't like to ask for help, or they're very selective about who they ask for help from. And that suicidal tendencies manifests itself in all different ways. So there's the 22 a day, and there's also in just about every community there are different help centers um, to help different vets in different ways. I mean, like I said, everybody's got a unique set of circumstances. So even if you do have a VA, even if you do have organizations in your area, try to get a little bit local, try to get a little bit of eye contact and face to face with a lot of these guys, especially based on my experience. What I find is for a large part of it, they like to be outdoors. They love animals. So with the rescues and stuff like that, there's a lot of different ways to help. And the 20-second thing is cool, just getting the exposure out there and giving people ideas, different ways they can get involved.
That's an excellent point. My mom does that with her dogs. She takes it into vets' homes, and she has little tiny dogs, and just bringing those little tiny dogs in and letting people, let them jump up people's lap and pet them and stuff. It's awesome. So, I mean, who doesn't have dogs? Or a cat, I guess. There's probably some people that want to pet a cat.
Absolutely.
Or maybe they're deranged or something. They got some kind of shell shock and they want to touch the cat, but whatever. Yeah.
We have little cabins at the shelter. A lot of guys just like to camp there. A lot of guys have campers and stuff like that. They volunteer at the shelter. They get, they get fed hot meals. They get people company if they want it. They get animal company if they want it. Like I said, that's a particular niche that I found personally based on my experience, and that's what I meant is even if some of this stuff seems foreign to you, what connects with you in your personal life, because we all know vets.
Maybe you like to cook, maybe you like to grow something in the garden and take it down and participate like that. Read, right?
Mm-hmm. Only a human, only a person
for a walk.
Exactly. Only a person can help a person. People help themselves. Whenever you get a group of people looking to do good, it just usually doesn't pan out that well long term. Short term, you can help more than you think.
Well, and I'm no therapist or anything either, but I've got to assume that those are like dark times, that are a moment or whatever, a fleeting moment, an overall lifetime, when somebody has those kind of urges or whatever the hell that would be called. I don't know the politically correct way of saying it, but it's got to be the kind of thing where, just knowing they have somebody to make a phone call to could probably make a big-ass difference, especially when we're talking about this many people.
No, exactly. And, a lot of times they don't like to talk to outsiders. They don't like to talk to people that don't have similar experiences. Like I said, a lot of pride, a lot of honor. There's a whole bunch of different manifestations of it.
Well, like I said, I'm not sure. We got some viewers there, so maybe we'll start getting some comments, but I don't know. We can address it again. Unless DB had something to throw out there. Why don't we move to the Chris Kyle? Obviously, that's a big thing. I don't know. I saw a lot of tributes to him today on the Facebook for sure.
There was something posted. I gotta try to find.
The movie broke another record this weekend, Super Bowl weekend. It broke a Super Bowl weekend record because I guess usually people don't go to the movies on Sunday,
Oh, you mean on the actual day of the Super Bowl? Or was that yesterday?
Yeah, it broke a record. Made more money than any other movie ever. So.
That's pretty neat. And it's just overall, it's been doing well in the theaters, right?
Oh, it's made more money than any other movie in January in history or something like that. Dude, January is not usually a good month.
As I say, this isn't like a big month for movies or anything normally.
No, it's usually the worst.
So that's an indication that people wanted to see it not only or they wanted to go out of their way to see it, because normally they wouldn't go out and look for a movie this time of year.
They can't
And
even understand it. It's making more money. It's making money like a summer blockbuster. Like it's making money like a Star Wars or something like that. You know, it's like I think it's at 200 million already.
So you figure these guys
300
that
million.
are talking shit about basically whatever, just to get out into the publicity, we won't name, not to mention, we all know who we're talking about. You think they're looking at it like they're maybe so...
I think they might be helping the sales because they come out and say negative things.
Well, I guess the reason I'm saying that, maybe the reason they're saying negative things is if they see so much positive reaction to a movie like that, it's got to be a doom and gloom for their shit outlook on the world, right? That means who's going to want to go watch their movies if people are flocking to the alternative, right? Well.
And also today, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, declared it Chris Kyle Day, and they started a petition for the Medal of Honor. That was the other feed that I got from this morning.
Now, this is the day of his death, correct? He was killed today, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, is it just me, or wouldn't his date of birth be a more appropriate one? Or I don't know, is that a customary to do the death one? I doubt Texas is listening to this, so I'm just wondering.
And I don't think I ever really got my degree in political correctness.
Well, I don't know if that's political correctness. I just thought tradition or whatever.
Well, I was
usually done on Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday. I'm thinking heroes usually go to their day of birth, so you don't think about the bad part, think about the good part.
But I think part of the thing is tied in with the petition for the Medal of Honor, and the fact that the way the story unfolded, his death is probably more appropriate for what they're looking to do. I mean, as far as being a hero and what happened to him, again, near somebody trying to help vets.
So I guess we'll just, we've got a bunch of people have joined us. We've got about 30 viewers now. Kind of started out with viewers, so I'll just repeat ourselves here a little bit. I apologize to all the people that already heard this, but we were starting out the podcast. We had a couple of guests scheduled. Both of them ended up backing out, one with computer issues and the other I just didn't get a reply from. So I actually had a third one who I just found out about their page on Facebook the other day. The Polite Society podcast. Has anyone heard of them before? I was just browsing, doing some surfing, and I came across them. So I asked them to join, and they weren't able to today, but they are out there watching. So saying hello to them. Hopefully maybe we'll get them on in the future. I'll just bring up too at this point that we just got done with SHOT Show a couple weeks back now, and I did talk to Alan Gottlieb from Second Amendment Foundation. Every year I've been going, this was my 10th year. They've always had a booth at SHOT Show. Their booths are kind of awesome because they have just a bunch of the coolest bumper stickers, slogans, and whatnot. Nowadays they've got some patches as well, other little things, I guess. But the bumper stickers, what I always remember. And it's one of those things that I almost always grab, like an assortment of 10 or whatever it is for $20. More of a donation than anything, but you also get just really cool, like in-your-face kind of gun bumper stickers, stuff I probably wouldn't put on my car. But it's nice to have maybe for the guns toolbox or the locker door or something like that. Anyway, he said he'd be interested. I also was up in the kind of the media room. As a room upstairs where you have like a room for the media people to take a break and sit down and do interviews and stuff. And I was talking to the Haas USMC friend of mine, and I was actually handing him the tan Every Second Matters patch. He didn't have one yet. And as I was doing that, a guy named Oleg Volk, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the name, happened to see us, or something caught his eye, and he asked about it, and I explained what it is, and I guess I probably should have done that at the beginning of the podcast. Every Second Matters is nothing more than an awareness campaign. It's just the logo, Every Second, with 2 ND like that. It matters, and it was something that a group of us came up with, a group of us that used to chat. and a lot of us still chat in these live hangouts quite often in the evenings talking about guns. And after the whole Sandy Hook thing, the whole back and forth during 2013, it got kind of frustrating to see the flow of information and just so much of it. Trying to filter it all out was difficult. So we started thinking about how we could help raise awareness and help some of these states. I think it kind of started from helping the states that we don't live in, like a lot of us don't live in Connecticut or New Jersey, and how can we help the people that are kind of behind enemy lines like that. And I think we started out with wearing a empty holster, or no, it was open carry at first, and there's obviously a lot of debate back and forth on open carry. So quickly went to maybe carrying an open holster, an empty holster, and some symbolizing that you don't have your Second Amendment rights or your open carry rights or whatever it is. And then that kind of quickly went away because of the potential problems with someone carrying a holster in a campus or something like that. And then it went to the patch or the logo, I think, or basically the logo on a T-shirt. Or maybe I'm trying to summarize now from a year ago, but I think we might have gone through a couple of variations of how we were going to get the conversation started, and we ended up with a simple logo that's kind of makes you question what it's trying to say. The phrase "every second matters," as though you don't want to dally, you want to be accountable for every moment in time. But with the 2ND, the symbol for second, Second Amendment. Makes people question what's the logo mean, and that was the whole clutch, the whole thing. That it was all about that, so that people might see this logo on a shirt or on a lot of people are putting them on patches or a hat or something, and see that and say, what does that mean? And then that gives you what are we going to call ourselves, ambassadors to the gun culture, gun community, gun society, whatever we want to call ourselves. It gives us the opportunity to then look around and think to ourselves, is this a good time to talk about it? And if it is, start a conversation about guns, however that person might be approached the best way. And if it isn't the best time to do it, archive that, hold on to it. And then sometime when it is a perfect time, you're in the car later and there's a pause and you have nothing to talk about. Hey, remember you asked me about my patch? Or hey, you remember you asked me about my shirt? Well, here's why I wear that shirt. And then that gives you a chance to approach the subject, and it's not in a emotional time or a reaction to some news story where people might be holding their position or holding their ground in the discussion or in the argument or in the debate. So I guess that was the concept, is just how we can subtly get the Second Amendment conversation going, and then it kind of lent itself to doing a show periodically or doing something periodically like this, so that we remember ourselves that it's something we want to talk about. So normally we would have a full panel here with 10 people. Obviously, with a like a loosely organized association like this, people don't always show up to be included. So when it is a fuller room, we would typically talk about what we did today or what we did this month in order to further the conversation. But whatever, as I'm talking here, we might get people jumping in. So anyway, that's the gist of Every Second Matters. So I was telling that to Oleg Volk, a lot shorter, more concise way of saying all that. And he was super excited. He thought it was really clever and thought it was really neat. And honestly, that's the reason I'm not discouraged that there's only a couple of us showing up tonight. And we're slowly growing here in the audience. But this isn't designed to be the new NRA. We're not trying to do anything here. We're just trying to keep the conversation going, even if it's a whisper, even if it's just a mutter, so that when we need the conversation to be a scream and we need the conversation to get out to everyone, the lines of communication have been established and they're there, and the pipes are clear. So hearing that from Oleg Volk, that he kind of gave us a pat on the back verbally to say, that's cool. I don't know, do you guys know who I'm talking about when I say Oleg Volk?
No, his name sounds familiar though.
No, I don't know.
Okay, you guys would know his pictures though. He's basically I trying to remember now, and I apologize if I'm getting it wrong, but I believe he was born in Russia, but his parents were born there for sure. He might have been born here, I forget. But he definitely, being either a first or a newly whatever whatever you call it when you come over here and you become a citizen. He appreciates the rights that we have here. They came here with intent for the for the purpose of gaining the rights, or having the rights established for them or protected for them like we have here. And it's just I don't want to say refreshing, because that's the kind of point of view that almost all of us, at least, if we don't have it, our grandparents have it, or our parents have it, or whoever it was that came over here has it. And it was just super refreshing back in the 90s and early 2000s when I was first playing on the internets, seeing his pictures pop up here and there. And like I say, you probably have all seen his pictures. I know you have, because now that people are totally, unscrupulous about just stealing other people's images and writing stuff on it. You've seen a million of those memes, or however you want to say it, with his pictures. And he's got the very nice, high-resolution black and white photos of very attractive but normal girls, not the bathing suits and boobs sprouting out of them. It's just the normal, super attractive, nice pictures with guns, and they'll say something like a restraining order is just a piece of paper, and that he kind of started doing that, but at the beginnings of the internet, and I suspect all these memes or whatever they're called are emulating what they started back then. So a lot of people have stripped off his words from him, or he taken one of his from his website without the words on it, and then you've seen them go around. A lot of them are iconic at this point. And just the fact that as soon as the internet was kind of made, people like him were using it as a communication tool to do what we're trying to do today. So that's pretty cool. I've got a couple of people texting me and paging me and stuff to get links, and that's awesome. I appreciate the fact that you want to jump in, but email me or email one of the guys that's on here, because I can't figure out how to get links off of the computer onto a text or some of the other ways people are trying to contact. So email or jump into Gun Channels and we'll send you a link. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just Googled Oleg Volkan. I've seen those photos a lot. It'll say stuff like, I carry this because a cop is too heavy or something. Or like statistics on police response and stuff. Yeah, that's mostly women.
To get back what you were saying before, G, in talking to Oleg, I think it's a good idea and a good strategy the way you go about it, because normally where the antis, the antis are at the polls, and the antis are at the press whenever there's some bad story they can latch onto and stir up the emotions. So I think the whole thing of it's like every second matters, but yeah, it's also too, it's like every day matters, because every day we're normal people. We're not just the villains when there's some horrible tragedy in the news, like the Bloombergs like to paint us out to be. So I personally, in the court of public opinions, as opposed to the legislative house, in the court of public opinions, I think it's important that it's an everyday consistent thing for people that are into that culture and into that lifestyle, and it's innocuous to us, like a pocket knife or car keys or anything like that. And the more headway we make into that on the everyday battle, as opposed to waiting for that defensive reflex we all seem to have. It's like, we all kind of like to sit around and just kind of look, and then some tragedy happens someplace in the world and the news explodes, and right away it's like, okay, back to battle. I think the way that you're going about it is much more effective as far as public opinion goes.
That's the question. How do we judge? I guess there's no need to, because it's not necessarily something that has a result, I guess. But is there some way to judge how effective a campaign such as this would be has done over time?
Well, do you mean empirically, or just like?
I don't know. That's why I guess I'm saying it, because what numbers could there possibly be? I guess you could use number of hits to the site or something like that.
Well, I will say this. I'm sure it could be done, but statistics can basically be whatever you want them to be. But one thing that I am noticing is that people are getting fed up with the the fear porn. People are getting fed up with the irresponsible cries to emotion, and they come from both parties too. It's not just from the anti-second opposition. There are plenty of people in the firearms industries that like to sensationalize and do those cute headline posts, and we've been talking about it for the past few nights. Anybody can have a web page. A lot of these articles that people are citing, they have no authors, they have no bylines, they appear out of nowhere, they're made up. We have to be more cautious about where we get our news lately, and I think that's becoming a snowball effect in our favor, because we're interacting with these people personally. Okay, we're showing ourselves personally to them in this, if we want to call it a non-crisis time, like, there's no horrible tragedy in the news that people are overreacting to. Okay, and that's the image that we need to carry into a lot of the states now. Like here in Texas, we have legislature open. Okay, and that's the image that we need to carry into legislature. So I think that works well. So as far as the first indication that I am getting about different things like this being effective is that, the people that I meet on a daily basis are pretty much sick of hearing all the time about the crazies, the this, the that. They're starting to realize, especially when they look and see how skewed some of these quote unquote facts are that are being presented against the Second Amendment. A lot of people are getting fed up with it. A lot of people are beginning to see that, hey, you know what? G-Webs may not be the problem. DB may not be the problem. Bob may not be the problem. There may be something else going on around here. So in talking to people on a regular basis, I am seeing that.
I guess we could. I mean, I didn't take away from all that, but it'd be funny if we had, if we saw people. Yeah. Sorry, I'm distracted. I'm sending emails here. DB.
He must be cooking or doing laundry or something.
I'm doing laundry and cooking.
I just sent out a bunch of new emails to people that got one email in, so we'll send one out, and then I sent a couple.
Is it a coincidence that this is Every Second Matters and their Every Town Matters?
Who was first? I think we were first, weren't we?
Maybe we can sue them. I doubt we'll win, though.
Well, you never know.
Well,
I think it's possible to get them, whoever runs that, as a guest on our shows.
That would be awesome. I doubt it.
They appear to be very centrally and remotely controlled as far as their public presence goes, and their strategy. I mean, from everything I've seen in print and heard, there's just no way, without it being like a major political Bloomberg assemblage, that you're ever going to get any open sort of public debate with them, because they can't run the risk of it being uncontrolled.
The states that are next are, what is it, Oregon's next for them, and then they're planning on moving to Texas or something with their bills. But
well, they showed up down here.
Keep an eye on them guys.
Yeah, they showed up down here last week when the legislature opened. One of the things that they're looking to do, because we have a few bills in legislature. When they showed up, it was kind of like a bit of a surprise. Instead of going just solely direct opposition against the bills that were put in legislature, what they started was attacking what we have down here. It's called the 3006 sign, which is the law that specifies the type and the size and the wording of a sign if a business wants to exclude firearms from its premises. So there's actually a legal sign that you have to have. Blah, you just can't put a gun with a circle through it, and that doesn't have the standing of law. So they came in, and what they're doing now is they're trying to push legislation in to change that, because they're saying that that law is too restrictive against business owners that want to provide gun-free environments, and it's so convoluted that we're almost making them not be able to.
Well, that's good. So they must like tailor their attack to every state, and then they start small. Well,
Do you
last time
think
I was
so?
on their website. Yeah, I mean, last time I was on their website, all they could talk about was Washington and how they got that bill passed, and that was their first victory. So
But
they need
I
a
guess
second victory.
no. What I'm
Possible.
asking is, do you think that they're gonna like, if they have a playbook, are they gonna like rewrite their playbook for each state, like, or are they just gonna blanket the same thing
so.
each time?
Well, it's
Yeah.
not that they need to rewrite it. I mean, we know what the overall playbook is. Okay, as far if you want to talk federally, we know what that is. We know what they want. Okay, the court of public opinion, you can sway with the media federally, but when you're starting to talk about now bills going into Congress and legislation and stuff like that, I mean, I don't expect anybody that lives in Arizona or California, I mean, to support the cause here in Texas, absolutely sure. But now the specifics of it and the details of the law, when you start to turn away from that war of public opinion to the actual battle of legislature, your tactics need to change some. They need to become more specific. They need to become more direct.
Sorry for the dead airs here. I'm again trying to keep track. I couldn't tell if the YouTube one was broken or if I needed to refresh over there. I think it's just not getting a lot of traffic on it. You were talking about Texas law specifically, or just any of the states that are going to defend against them?
I'm talking about any of the states. The way I see it, you're looking at three things. We have state and local laws. We have federal laws. And then we have, for lack of a better expression, the court of public opinion. Okay, we can see by the track record in their history that sweeping, prohibitive federal laws don't play too well in the media. They're still not at that point yet as far as support goes. So a lot of those big campaigns are really just that. They're just propaganda, media plays to emotions, and things of that effect. Okay, they want to create the emotional environment, but then if they want to have this emotional opinion transferred into statutes and legislation, then that comes down to play in the game in whatever the local political system is for them, as close as they can get. And like DB just pointed out, okay, they had a certain success here, so now they're going to try that someplace else. They're going to try that someplace else where they think it could work. Obviously coming here to Texas, they didn't think it was a good strategy to butt head to head with 4 open carry bills. So they presented different legislation and went about it a different way. Okay? So I think you're going to see that more tailoring now as we get to more and more elections and more local pollings, where things aren't going to be as much of an emotional media sensation as it is going to be the games that are played behind the scenes.
What do you guys think about having? Okay, so we've got existing organizations that are doing their thing, and their thing might be like the NRA, lobbying or defending. I don't know what the NRA does, but they all have their established arms or their established divisions that do various things, and we've heard it described that some of them are more lobbyists and some of them are more lawyers for like Supreme Court cases, right? Some of them like go after different aspects of the three branches of government. And okay, so we've got these established players. Now Bloomberg comes along and throws a bunch of money down. It turns into an organization and is now all this like wave going through, and we're seeing, it already hit Washington. Now it's going to go out towards other states. Do we expect the existing established groups to be able to just, I don't know what to call it, like absorb or parry or like react to that? Or would a new organization designed to combat the threat be a strategy? Or would that be too logistically much? Although, I mean, things are getting easier and easier to organize, right? Or start, In other words, when we have an attack like this, do we fight it with a thing that's designed to fight the attack and then it disappears? Or do we expect our established organizations to try to figure out how to attack it? Or is there another way?
If you muddle forward blindly, is what my experience is.
Say that again?
I think we muddle forward kind of blindly, just in like groping in the dark, trying to get what everybody wants done, but everybody's doing it a different way.
Well, that's what's happened, I think you're saying, but I'm saying, would it work to have organizations pop up to deal with threats and then disappear, and then have the established organizations be the pillars or the docks or whatever, the foundations that these other groups can pop up and rise and do their thing and melt back into? Or I'm just wondering, is what they're doing, was it effective because they were able to outfight, outmaneuver our established stuff? Are they winning because they figured out our strategies and they worked around them? Or were we just blindsided?
I think they win because of what you say. Kind of like within the question yourself is we dissipate, and kind of like what Dr. No touched on earlier, where it's like the NRA will say, okay, well Texas is facing this issue, but I don't think they actually do a good job of delivering other NRA members from other states to actually. Well, I mean, I don't want to say fight other people's fight, but I don't know, to help them out in the fight in the long haul. You know what I'm saying? It's okay. That's this weekend's article. Maybe maybe I'll send them $5, but I don't care anymore about Texas in 2 weeks, like you said.
Me personally, I think, tactically, it's a mistake to have the individual groups pop up. With like you say, it's easier to organize now. We can have more frequency. That's fine, but that also plays into the divide and conquer hand that the Bloomberg et al.'s like to play against us, and the government in general. It's not just this one issue. It's a lot of issues. But you get into the situation where, as a community, we hear all the time how we can't stand shoulder to shoulder, the FUDs, the black rifle guys, the self-defense guys, okay? And then everybody gets the idea that they can make a better group, and maybe 0.01% of those groups are better or something like that, and they become something. But I mean, my personal feeling is, unless you're mobilizing to act locally, like at the state level against specific legislation, I think that that it just creates more division. It gives us more of a reason to not stand together. It's like, I'm for black rifles and hunting, and I believe in Jesus, and then all of the peripheral issues get tacked on in these little groups, and that's ultimately what ends up being their demise. Not the core issue that they're trying to address, but the fact that they absolutely positively cannot put their peripheral issues aside, and they just find it easier to come up with another splinter group.
Well, there's something that kind of illustrates this that I think is going on, if I'm reading correctly what's going on in the Ninth Circuit Court, because with the whole Florida case and the Richards, Yolo County, and the whole carry issue is because I think the Cal Guns lawyer, Alan Gura, he had his strategy that won, but he's lost, I think, 1 or 2 cases before the Supreme Court before. And the NRA lawyer, and I think Clements, I don't know. I'm trying to follow all the stuff on the bulletin boards about what's happening, but it's like, who's going to argue before the Supreme Court? It's like the NRA or the Cal Guns lawyer, and they're fighting over that because that's a high stakes prestige, argument to argue before the Supreme Court. But if Alan's already lost 2 cases, the NRA guy, but it's Alan's strategy that kind of got the whole thing. The fact that Alan Gura, that they didn't challenge a federal or state statute when they won the case, that was like his idea of arguing the case, and so I think the NRA lawyer wants to jump in, and they're fighting, and those are like 2 big, pro Second Amendment, probably the most important case that's going to come down the pike anytime soon. If it makes it to SCOTUS.
And plus, too, like I was saying earlier, G, I mean, I've always really liked your approach of being more proactive, being more out in the public, being more out and about when the hot buttons aren't being pushed. I think that goes a long way. Once again, when we're back into the local legislature now, and it's not a national ad campaign or a national propaganda campaign, but when the bills are actually being presented in the House, I think that goes a much longer way. The way the community presents itself, and bands together, so to speak. We just don't want that to be like a mercenary strike. We band together when we're being opposed and oppressed, and then we just go back to being politically correct and apologetic.
Okay, a couple of things. First, I want to address the first part of that, and I don't know who even is listening to this who might have heard me in other discussions or whatever. I almost always at least play devil's advocate, if not, I don't want to say defend, but I don't have a problem for sure. I'm definitely ambivalent. I never scorn the people that open carry in Chipotle or whatever. I'm all about open carry long guns if you want to do it. I'm not suggesting though that I think that's the best strategy or anything. So I'm going to address that in a second. But when you finished up there, talking about how'd you end that? You were saying the open carry and that the way that we frame it. I lost track of what it was.
The part about the way we represent ourselves,
right,
in public. Yeah, I think that's important, and I'm not a law person. I don't think there should be a law that anybody should tell me whether or not I can or can't open carry. But the fact remains that I don't care what you're talking about. Just because something's legal doesn't make it safe or smart or right. I mean, we can all agree upon that. So yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to balance sometimes.
I guess what I was just going to address is that I don't necessarily. I mean, although like I say, I won't scorn the people that want to walk around open carrying, and once in a while I open carry. I'm not an advocate for like always, without question, being in your face about guns, because I don't think that furthers a cause ever. And no absolutes are almost, rarely are absolutes, appropriate all the time, right? So there's always going to be times, if I'm in Tucson and I'm going to the rodeo or something, open carry is one thing, but if you're in New York City, right, different setting, it's different. So I'm not going to suggest that always open carrying is a thing, but I'm definitely an advocate for, I don't know what the word would be, not sober like gun use, but just like gun use. It's there, like non-excited. The problem I think that we got a lot is that what experience do people get with firearms? It's either in a movie where it's exaggerated, crazy, hyper gunfights type of stuff, or in the news, and it's all super negative. We just rarely see a movie about car racing, and they just happen to go, they happen to be coming home from the rifle range, and the guns aren't a big deal. They just happen to be in rifle cases, and it's just a prop in the movie. I can't even think of an instance where, the same way that a spatula or a glass of water in a movie might just be used as a prop, where like a firearm isn't, somehow, given connotation. Either it's about to do, save the world, or it's about to harm the world. It's always got to have some like part in the movie, like a starring role. And I think just by downplaying firearms as being some sort of dramatic thing all the time, and putting them back where fire extinguishers are, making them boring, like the wrong kind of glasses, or the mom jeans or something. I'd be happy if guns got into that part where it's like, oh, necessary evil, like having a spare tire. Nobody talks about it because it's just obvious you have a spare tire. You don't want to be stranded on the side of the road. Sure, you can live life without a spare tire. You can assume that the government should pick you up or change your tire. Maybe you think the police should be able to do that, or maybe you think tow trucks should be supplied by the interstates or something. Or you could have AAA, and you could think, I'd never have to change a spare tire because I don't like to do it. It's dirty, I don't like to do it. But most everybody's still got a spare tire, and you just don't think about it. That's where I'd like to eventually get guns. So if there's a goal, that's the goal. Like it's a screwdriver or like a crowbar or something that people barely talk about. It's just a thing that's there. And then the same like a chainsaw or something. There just happens to be some people that go and have competitions with chainsaws. Some people like firearms so much they have competitions with them.
I don't think that's ever going to happen because firearms are too integral to the American story, history.
I hear that all the time, and I'll let you continue, but I'm going to jump in and say,
no, go ahead.
To look at history, because firearms came from that. Let me just write down something as a note to myself.
While you're doing that, I just want to jump in and say I look at that as the opposite. I listen to you as saying I want to get back to that place because that's where we came from.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the guise of civilization that has put the spotlight on the tool,
right,
and not the culture. And this is funny because of all the commotion that Yeager caused with his culture versus culture or whatever community thing, and I think that's a good indication. At some point in time, a person used to get up in the morning, he used to take his wallet, his keys, his glasses, his gun, and he used to go about his day, and nobody had a problem with it. And then at some point in time, as quote-unquote civilization progressed forward, okay, more and more spotlights started to be shown upon the actual implement, and it started to get separated from its daily usage. And now you can talk about the movies and the news and the media, and it was given a life and it was given the capability of doing evil on its own and tossed out into the media. And I think that's the difference when we talk about open carrying. I mean, there's those people out there that it was no different than a set of keys. Okay? And I don't have a problem with that at all.
Go back even further. Go back to like Daniel Boone or whatever, Pioneer in America kind of thing. I guarantee you, no kids were like, they were probably sick of guns. They were just like a shovel or something else. Like, that's a chore. You got to clean it. You can't let it get rusty. You have to worry about it. They'd much rather just be off doing whatever kids did back then.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it wasn't like they were.
Don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yeah. Now I look at it as, and once again, I'm painting a broad brush here, and there's exceptions to everything. But if you just look at the other 50% of it, there's this first, we'll say 50-50. I don't know what the numbers are, but here's this first 50-50 people. Like I said, it was a screwdriver, a hammer, a toy. Okay. Now, move ahead to where we are now, and we have this whole segment of the population that's like, hey, look at my gun. Hey, look at my gun. I'm carrying my gun. Why? Because I'm allowed to. Hey, look at my gun. Look, see. And like you said before, constantly putting it in people's faces, whether it's legal or not, okay, isn't necessarily the best way to get people on our side. And you're never going to get them on your side when something goes wrong and there's one of those horrible calamities that everybody's playing their emotions off of.
No, exactly, and that's obviously a big part of why we started this whole thing, and I think why everybody's here, and we're all preaching to the choir, but hopefully there are people that are listening that have an open mind if they're, for some reason, against individual right to protect yourself or to own a firearm. But that's sort of the point, is that In between times is when the work gets done or could be done. And that was one of the things I was trying to remember before. Sorry, I kind of went off topic there because I didn't want to make it, I don't want to leave it like, or I want to make it clear that just because I will defend the right of the open carry people in Texas to carry their long arms into Chipotle, I think that we as gun owners just need to learn to get, to take a black eye once in a while and to accept the fact that as freedom or free people, there's going to be people that are free to do things that we consider dumb or you might consider dumb. And that I'm not also at the same time not suggesting that being blatantly in your face all the time is a great strategy either. So anyway, I didn't want to leave that because I don't know if people are going to come away with this thinking one way or the other about the general opinion of the group. The group doesn't have an opinion. The group is just a bunch of individuals, and I'm just clarifying my point of view on that. But when we get back to your point about keeping or staging the argument or staging the debate, I shouldn't call it an argument. I think we can use this a firearms analogy. Why did they create the shooting sports? At least in the United States, with firearms, shooting sports were developed. Now I'm going to forget the name of the two generals, but the NRA in effect was created when some generals saw how sloppy we were, in the Spanish-American War or the War 1812 or something, and they said, "Wow, ever since the Civil War, our guys got sloppy." We brought back then we didn't have standing armies, if I remember correctly. Guys would form up when necessary, and then they would go back to home and do their thing again. And when they called them back up for that, whatever the next war was, or skirmish or whatever we want to call it back then, a war, I guess. They said, "Hey, you guys are not good at marksmanship. They hunt or whatever, but let's get some competition going. Let's get them practicing their marksmanship in a sporting way so that they remain sharp," right? And I'm just saying this story because I think we can think of the political debates, the political and legal and political debates the same way. We can think of this time when it's relatively calm as our practice time. And if the practice is something like Silencer Co. and the American Suppressor Association fighting to remove suppressors from the registry so that you can buy them just over the counter, or if it's one of the other grassroots groups that are trying to do their thing, it's a perfect time to get out there and practice. That's what practice is all about, is trying, perhaps making a mistake and figuring out what doesn't work, and then stumbling across things that will work, poking at the enemy, see where their weaknesses are. And since they're going to keep striking, like now, well, at least I consider the Washington State thing a strike because they didn't use any tragedy or any kind of horrific event. If I remember correctly, they just did this out of nowhere. This is a time when we should be studying their strategy. It's like they're sparring in front of us and we're on the sidelines, getting a chance to watch our opponents, right?
Yeah, and these are the best times. I mean, it's unfortunate to say this, and it should be, but I was looking at something someone said in the chat, something about their father's lifetime and their grandfather's lifetime. Like, I had a grandfather, and he carried a gun, but like he had to jump through super duper hoops to do that, and that was only on because he was in the car business and he traveled around buying used cars. My father had a pistol permit when he was like not in New York at one point in his life. He told me, and just so from my parents' generation, and I think their parents' generation, could never get a handgun permit as easy as I can, and no matter what state they're in. I mean, I just feel like it's like the best of times and the worst of times. You know what I mean? It's just like we're constantly under attack. However, somehow since the 80s, like we've pulled it out. Like like we're squeaking it out every time, and it's just hard to fight because that's where the complacency comes from. Is just like I'm sure everyone else is either new to guns, never really thought about it like that, wasn't around for '94, and really weren't. They just really don't know. They're either new or they're like they look at it from that point where, wow, I mean, I don't know. We need to be so vigilant because things are the best they've ever been, almost. You know, it's crazy.
Well, that's sure, but that's only going back 2 generations. If you go back another 2 generations, we're in a different position again. You go back 2 more generations, and it's totally different. So I hear you that it changes all the time, but yeah, we do need to recognize that we're in a bad position. We're in the worst position ever, for sure.
And that's probably what I'm just saying, like the numbers, like the strength in numbers, right? And the numbers of the NRA are astonishingly low when you think about it. Like, I just found out about the numbers like a few months ago, so I'll ask people I know, like they'll talk negative about the NRA and what a powerful force it is and how they're scum or whatever, and I'll say, do you know how many people are in the NRA?
Well, now, do you
And the answer is always like around 10 million, 20 million or something,
Are you saying it's a low number compared to other years, compared to people's perception, or compared to like a percentage of the gun owners in the country?
And I just think it's astonishingly low in comparison to the national view of that organization's power and how people always talk about, on their side, not our side, but on their side, they'll always say stuff like, we'll never get stuff done because the NRA is such a powerful organization and they scare Washington and everyone's intimidated, every politician's intimidated by them and this and that, And
for sure. I would think that, well, we're not pulling any punches here because we're not affiliated with anybody, we're not sponsored by anybody, and we're not necessarily backing anybody, we're not against anybody either. But, the NRA is what it is. And what they're doing is they're capitalizing, right? They're exploiting the fact that the left is either lazy, stupid, or both. And it's easier for them on a newspaper headline or whatever to say NRA than it is to say people who demand freedom or people who, cherish their individual rights. It's just faster to write NRA to scorn it. Then they get to pick out all the specific details of the NRA and their pluses and minuses, and we all, we're gun owners, we know that there's pluses and minuses to that organization. They get to pick all the negatives they want, apply them to all of us, disregard all the positives, because we all know that the NRA has plenty of positives as well. They get to disregard all those. Then they get to go to the general population of gun owners, pick every bad thing, and then, of course, they're going to include criminals in with gun owners because, gun crime is done by gun owners in their eyes. So they're going to take all the bad parts they want from both, put it under the label of NRA, you know what I mean? And the NRA is able to sit behind that and go, yeah, sure, we're the gun, we're everything, we're the guns. Like, if there's guns in the United States, it's, we're part of it.
Well,
but I agree with you that it's a small percentage of the actual gun owners, let alone the people in the country.
Right, and they never ever mention GOA. They never ever mentioned 2AF or nothing.
You're talking about the mainstream media.
I'm talking about the enemy, like the enemy. Like,
oh,
you never hear them say stuff about GOA or.
Well, that's an excellent point, though, because, like you say, the media likes to make it be like the NRA, and we're talking about the lobby NRA here. Probably more should be talking about the ILA, but the Bloombergs like to throw around how awesomely powerful, and it's like the largest. One of the articles said it was the largest lobby. It's not even close to the largest lobby in Washington, and that brings us to the whole WWF thing. Okay, the reason why those 3 letters are thrown out there, NRA, is for the same reason. They need, the NRA needs Bloomberg as much as Bloomberg needs the NRA, and they need to have these matches staged once again in the court of public opinion. And this is where I say, like, you have one battle that you're fighting there, and then you have the legal battles that you're fighting when the resultant bills of all of this theatrics gets thrust into our capitals.
I think the ILA is mostly the political battles, not the legal battles. There's a lot of organizations that do, the legal stuff, not just the NRA.
Would it do us, just as a people, the country, would it do us better or do us a positive if someone or if groups were to, like, do some illumination on the scale or the proportion of the different groups? because again, I'm sure the NRA is larger than the others, but when I think, like DB was saying, when you compare it to what their perception is of how big or how inclusive the NRA is to either the world of gun owners or the percentage of the population of the United States, uh, it's not anywhere near, like we know how small it is, and if they saw that, would that be a benefit to everyone, or would that be a benefit to themselves because now they have a better idea that the thing that they're raging against, in other words,
That's minutia.
more
That's
focus on the
minutia.
NRA against them, the thing that they're raging against is now we've shown them that it's only a certain percentage, and it happens to be mostly the old white hunters who they, unless they're in PETA, probably don't care too much about them because they're only threatened by the perceived criminals and the guys who they perceive as criminals, like Ted Nugent probably, or stuff like that.
Well, perceptions are what count, not facts.
Right.
I'm reading
Well,
this
I guess
like
the question,
Mother
would it do
Jones.
us any good to try to put the scale of the NRA and the other groups in proportion for
No.
for everyone? Just put it out there and say,
Everyone
look,
already
you
has
think
a
the NRA
perception
is
of
so
the
big,
NRA.
here it is. Why not?
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
this
you
like
can.
article on Mother Jones. I just want to. It's just like that I found through Google, and Mother Jones is like the ultra left wing. They're nuts. They call right wingers nuts. They're nuts too. Left wing nuts, and they're in this article. They're talking about how the NRA might say they have 4 million members, but they do it in unscrupulous ways. Like there's an issue of the NRA Recruiter from '08 where Browning, Beretta, Taurus, and Wilson Combat were offering free NRA memberships to anyone who would purchase their product. And I'm sure they're saying that like the NRA is even fluffing their numbers. But what bothers me is that I'm pretty sure it wouldn't even like there's what bothers me is that if I had any power in that world in that gun industry, it would be you just basically get them all together, like all the big gun companies, and you say, what, for the next 5 years, can we just include a free membership with the purchase of any? I don't care if it's a High Point. Just fill in a card, you call a number, you boost the numbers. I mean, because they're already accusing you. They're accusing you of boosting your numbers, but I think they've done such a half-assed job of boosting their numbers in the last like 10 years that they're not even trying. You know what I mean? Like I really do think they could get it up there. They could double it in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and be more terrifying to these left-wing nut jobs, Because I think once the numbers get up that high, I think they'll be terrified. When I don't know what every town has, but I bet you it's not even 1 million. We need to like completely crush them in numbers and their strength in numbers, and it just bothers me that you read about, I think, what was it, like 25 million NICS checks last year, and like every year it's higher and higher. Like for the last 5 years, it's something like 150 million NICS checks, and a lot of it's the same guy.
Van Halen song, straight up higher and higher,
It's like the same thing that like some people are like, people we know that have 20,000 guns. One guy has 400 guns, so he's the reason why he's buying guns. But no, I'm telling you that number, if it's 30 million last year and it's 30 million, these are just NICS checks. Forget private sales and then people who went and got their permit first and then avoid a NICS check through their state law. You can't even imagine the new gun owners in the last 5 years. I mean, it's a number it's incredible. So if like just 5% of those people would just join the NRA, it would be devastating to them. I think they would just be completely shaken in their boots. Then they'd realize they could never win. And they want to argue about 4 million NRA memberships and maybe, half a...
You lose him?
Did he cut out for everybody? Okay. Do you think that it's possible? First off, there's a couple of things to it. I was going to say, let me write some notes down because he brought up a bunch of good stuff.
While you're writing, I'll just say that in Hawaii, I mean, there are definitely the NRA. They messed up this last election. They didn't even, how they sent out their, American Rifleman or whatever, and it has like their political recommendations or voter card. Here's who we endorse. They didn't even figure out who the Republican candidate for the United States Senate seat was. It was just left blank. And I was so pissed. You know, all the other states wherever you live, they put, you know, here's the Republican candidate who, you know, supports gun rights, and all I got was blank. And the problem is that the Republican candidate he was so supportive of gun rights, and he has such a name recognition problem because this is Hawaii, and nobody ever would think to, you know, give that they could actually win anything in Hawaii. But all the Inouye is gone, all the old senators are gone, and we had this little cherry kid who was afraid to debate the Republican, who ducked the whole debate. He won a 2-year term to fill in the senator that died, and nobody, the NRA didn't even bother to Google the guy's name who was running up against him. I mean, I'm so pissed at the NRA, but you know, I mean, you know, what are you gonna do? Right, well, that's me talking. So somebody else come in.
So I was going to say that what DB brought up, though, can the NRA get as big as you're basically suggesting? How great it would be if all these, what we suspect are new gun owners, new to the scene, you know, buying, you know, by the evidence of the guns being purchased or the background checks to allow the guns to be purchased going through. We assume that means that purchases are being made by individuals who exist. So if they were all to join the NRA roster would get larger. Is it that black and white? Do you think that if they made a nicer marketing, or they did something, whatever the key is, you know, that they could just get all the new gun owners? Or do you think that, I mean, I don't know, it just seems like that's got to be their goal. I don't think they're not trying to do that. I just figure it's like sort of like how many people send in warranty cards when they buy a washing machine or a microwave or something. You know, some people probably do and some people probably don't. And then there's some people that sometimes do and sometimes don't. And I think that might just be the way that it comes down, that we just don't see a perceived need to fight for our freedom unless it's under attack, perhaps.
The problem is the Constitution didn't come with a warranty card.
Yeah, like the product warranty card, yeah. It's got one of those, like, do not destroy a mattress tag things, but somebody ripped that off during the Civil War, I think. So that was my one thing is, I don't know, can the NRA even get that big? I mean, I suppose the organization can be that big. How, DB, are you still here? How big are you guesstimating that might be? Like, did we ever come up with like a good estimate of how many gun owners we think there are? I guess he left. I mean, I've heard estimates from 10 million to 40 million or more. So, you know, how are there organizations with 40 million members?
40 million members?
I mean, besides online things, I guess there's probably that many people on Facebook and stuff, but are there groups out there? I mean, how big is like AARP or one of the other big organizations that exist? How big are the labor unions?
Well,
I'm sure I could Google it.
External can Google it, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering, are we talking about something that just can't even physically happen? Like, can organizations get that big?
Membership. Well, let's see. Let's just say the AARP goes, you know, that's huge.
As soon as you hit 50, you get a letter from them, basically.
Right, and you get benefits. Like, you get some sort of thing.
Organizations that are really big that so many people belong to.
Can you hear me now or no?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So they have 37 million people. See, that's what I'm talking about. So the AARP.
Okay, so then it would definitely be like feasible to have an organization that big. It would have to appeal to people, but heck, AARP's got competitors, right? And people that don't need it or don't want it or whatever, I suppose. It's not like everybody has to join it.
They access public records, and who owns guns is like not public, say, but like your age is. So, you know, as soon as you hit 50, you get a letter, but as soon as you buy a gun, you don't. You know, that's not public information. You know,
true, but I think if they wanted to go figure it out, there's a million ways to data mine who owns guns, or somehow, like DB said, just if they really, really, really wanted members, you would think they'd every single, well, and I would say, finish my statement, every single gun would come with a thing to join the NRA. I really can't think of too many guns that you buy anymore that don't have something in them that says join the NRA.
But it's not a free membership. I forgot what I
No,
pay for my
right. A free
membership. But
membership would definitely go a lot further.
I don't get the magazine because I'm poor. So I like told them I don't want the magazine. Like, let me get the abbreviated membership.
Not get the magazine? I thought it was the same price.
Yeah, no, I think it's cheaper. It's like 25 with the magazine and 20 without, or something like that. I forgot.
35.
Dang, you are poor.
So I didn't get the magazine because I don't want it anyway. But I joined, and I joined for 5 years or whatever it was. It was like 3 years. But I'm happy and proud to be a member and stuff. So I think 1 year would really hurt anybody. I have a gun shop that if you buy a gun from them, they give you like a $40 range card for range time. And yeah, it makes a huge difference when you're looking at like buying a gun from 2 or 3 gun shops, and you're like, oh, I'll just buy the one from that gives me $30, $40 range time. It adds up, but I don't know. There's other reasons they don't have the membership that I think the left or anybody just thinks they do. 4 million is, and if it's 3.8 million, there's no reason why they should be able to double these numbers in like a decade. It's just, I don't know what it was before, but it's just a problem I have.
Well,
so a lot of people are pro-gun and they're not members, and it pisses me off. Like if you're a pro-gun dude and you're not a member of the NRA, shame on you. And I just started.
You could, GOA or CalGuns or.
If you can join them all, but I just started getting in these chats like a year or two ago, so I started learning, and I was like, okay, I joined Second Amendment Foundation because I realized how important they were. So okay, cool. Like I'm not a member. I'll be honest, I'm not a member of GOA. I've seen him on TV, and I'm just not a member yet, but I should be. And I'm not that ashamed of not being a member. I'm sure some of you guys would tell me you should be ashamed of yourself, but I think like if you're not a member of the NRA, I mean it's like a no-brainer. Like it's just a joke. You should be a member, and we are the reason why. That I have gun friends that friends like family members that are into guns and claim to be pro-gun, but they're not a member of the NRA. Because they're just, I don't know, it's just too expensive, or it's whatever, it's too much hassle and stuff. It's just. And that's the problem. But every town, like they get passionate, like it's almost like I got my gun, I got my shotgun, what else do I care? I got mine already, who cares? Kind of attitude. Where those people don't care, like they're already like starting from a place behind us. They're trying to take something away from us that we already have. And especially if you went and bought your gun last year and you're new to guns, you already got your Glock or whatever. You already bought your Spikes AR. You're good, and then you don't join because whatever. But these people, they're trying to take something from you that you already got. So they're more passionate, I think. Like, and a lot of times they're just more passionate. They're more emotional about it.
So I don't disagree that by having more people in the NRA, it would be more of a deterrent for the antis, or I guess whatever. It would be more of a deterrent for the antis about to just randomly jump out if they knew how many people were actually, or they saw a much larger amount of people jumping on board with the pro-gun side, I guess. In other words, they'd have to have a lot more resources, a lot more intent than to just casually fight us or whatever. They'd have to, they'd have to know they're coming for bear. But going back to like the is it possible kind of thing, right now the problem, I think the reason that, again, these memberships are out there, and we can see even in the chat that people are not members for various reasons, right? As they're commenting or whatever, they've got whatever personal or political or whatever kind of reasons they're not members. That, I think, in itself is an indication that it would be just whatever, physically or just logistically to get everybody on board, because of the trying, like, you get that many people together unless it's something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of other organizations that are that big. Unless they're just strictly offering you something, though, then how do you get that many people to agree? I guess, we'll start looking at political parties. Honestly, I don't know. Obviously, the political parties are a lot bigger. But then you even look at, they're going to immediately have divisions. It's just the tendency of people to gather with those that are similar mindset or whatever characteristic you're, checking. You know what I mean? As you get larger, it's going to get divided. Is it possible that the NRA could get larger if it were to become less diverse or less had less stuff going on? If it was like a more single issue, like we're there to defend the Second Amendment, and they, obviously that's a little bit too simple, but just if they got down to one issue or fewer issues, could they get more people on board?
Yeah, probably. I wanted to just go back slightly to what you were saying before, near to the beginning about how like could smaller groups have an impact. And I'm just trying to remember, was that whole Colorado thing where that was smaller groups, like one guy started it, that wasn't like an NRA thing when they, dumped some of those politicians who were trying to ban guns and stuff and magazines. That wasn't like it. That was a smaller group that started.
As far as I'm aware, correct. It was individuals who were more passionate, more involved with the local situation, started it and followed through. But that's how I would expect a national level organization to be. I wouldn't want the NRA poking around in my state unless we asked them to be here. And I mean, I think to me the NRA should be a big, maybe hammer, just a big giant thing up there at the federal level that comes along and adds weight to the individual fine tools of the state level organizations that might need assistance. So those times when we're over here in Arizona and we've got resources, time, and money available, and somebody in New Jersey or Connecticut needs those, the NRA becomes the fulcrum that lets us apply pressure over there. That would be the ideal thing, right? But it seems like the way that it's run now, and I'm not, like I say, we're not pulling punches. I'm not going to critique it too bad because I don't know its ins and outs or anything. But it seems the way that it's run now is by the whim of a few people, and the way that they set it up and the amount of people that are involved, those people become the people that are involved. And we get the people that are like out in the chat saying, well, I'm not a member and I don't want to be. Well, great, you don't have to be or whatever, but then you also don't get to complain about what the NRA does, right? The only way you get to complain about or what the NRA does is by being a member, being a voting member, being an active participant in the process of the voting. And then you can be discouraged when you've gone through a lot of time and effort and put a position across, and a lot of people either, didn't like your position, or probably more often just didn't pay attention to any of the positions, and one squeaked by or was brought by in a landslide through some little shift. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing on a bigger scale than the whole country. We all are responsible for being vigilant against the people that want to do harm to the country or to our community or our family. We need to do the same thing in the NRA. I'm not sure what I'm trying to go with there, except that I knew that the elections are coming up, and just like the federal elections or just like state elections, I guess, if we don't participate in those elections, we can't really have much to complain about. All we can do is observe what the NRA does. If we want to make changes in what the NRA is doing, those of us that are voting members or lifetime members or people that have the voting ability, I don't know, are there conversations like this going on, amongst NRA members about who they should vote for? I've seen a few things, and it's not like I listen every day for it, but I've come across, I guess, a few times, really twice or three times only this year, that someone's voiced an opinion about one of the people running for the board. One of them was to say, what's his face? The singer guy, Ted Nugent, shouldn't even be on it because he's embarrassing. Another one was to say that this guy's running for office on the NRA and he's a friend of mine, so vote for him, and nothing about positions or anything. And then another that said, it was more of a longer article trying to give information about the various people running for the board or whatever it is on the NRA, and it actually gave position statements and two recommendations, two that in the article writer's mind were equally, the equal characteristics. So it was more of a, you pick either one of these, you're probably doing good. You pick these, you're voting for more of the same. And you pick this. I didn't read the whole article. Once I saw the two that they went with. That's as much time as I had to research. So I recognize those two, and like I say, I heard somebody else say, "Hey, the one of these two is a friend of mine, so vote for him." And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. There's no other information or anything." So again, I don't know. This is not an NRA chat or anything, and we know that not everybody is a member. It doesn't really matter if we're members or not. We're just kind of talking theoretically here or whatever. But earlier I had asked, is it better to have these existing organizations be the foundations that smaller organizations come up and do individual jobs and then disperse back into? It sounds like, I don't know where DB went, but if I can speak for him, it sounds like he thought it might be neat to have the NRA, or it might be effective to have the NRA grow large enough that it could become an organization that could then lend its weight to a smaller group to sprout up. I don't know if he went with me all the way to that, but it sounds like if there was a larger NRA, it could do that. Oh, you are in.
Yeah, I mean, they should be able to look at your zip code and email you tailor-fit emails, where you live, and telling you what local organizations to join, which ones to volunteer for. I get emails every week from GeorgiaCarry.org. Please come help us volunteer at a gun show. Please help us do this. Please help us do that. And sometimes I just can't do it. I'm just too busy. But at least they're trying, but the NRA could help out too.
Their zip codes, and then they manage to send all of us the same alarmist stuff about the UN, this and that.
I'm almost positive I would bet my pinky that's a private business, like a group that the NRA hired to fundraise, like a fundraising group.
Sort of like those police affiliations where, hey, yeah, we're the local police.
The Police Benevolence Association,
and you buy
exactly.
The sticker, and then it turns out that they have nothing to do with the police.
Right. I would like to think that way, because if the NRA is that dumb, then I'm sad. But I'm still a member, and I still encourage everyone to be a member. But the NRA, the UN calls that you get, it's the ILA trying to raise money, and I don't know if that's a separate business, that's doing the telephone fundraising thing. I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me. There's a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I don't want to join the NRA. I'll join a local organization." That's fine. Did you? Because sometimes there might not be a local organization for you. There is for me, and I know Florida Carry and Georgia Carry, but if I move to a certain state, I'm not sure. If every single state has a powerful, or not even a powerful, but an active gun right organization, and if they do, yeah, join. But some don't, and your only option is really Second Amendment Foundation, GOA, NRA. Are there JFPO? JPFO. I mean, what else is there?
I've been wanting to ask about that one. Did the rabbi that used to run that pass away?
I don't know exactly the history. Yes, one of the rabbis did pass away a long time ago. I mean, years ago. But they have also changed more recently, so I'm not sure which change in hierarchy you're talking about. They've recently been kind of, I don't want to say absorbed. They're their own entity, but they're working in line with the Second Amendment Foundation closer than they had in the past.
I'll have to check that out. Thanks.
But I was just talking about that because this is Every Second Matters. We chat about other gun organizations, right? That was a part of it. And
for sure.
And finding your local gun organization and joining it and being active in it. And if you can volunteer, that's awesome. If I could volunteer for this next thing for Georgia Carry, I would. But I'm
going to go ahead and just play devil's advocate, and just because I don't like to, we're free, and that's what we're really talking about here. Guns, in my mind, we're talking about freedom. I mean, guns are neat, and I like them just as much as the next guy. I have a couple. I like to shoot them occasionally, but to me, they're freedom in lots and lots of different ways. They parallel freedom. So I don't want to discourage people that don't want to become members of organizations. In fact, I'm not even going to recommend that everybody has to be a member. I think that there's nothing wrong with having people that are interested in being active participants doing so. However, I don't think that's a necessity for the whole population. I think you're just as well off, and probably strategically in a better position to have not all your eggs in one basket. So in other words, we want to have we want to have the ear of all of the people that are willing to do what's necessary, but we don't necessarily need them all on the rosters of one organization. I guess to put it down and dirty, it's fine that we get plenty of people in the NRA as long as we know that everybody's on the same track. Who really cares if they're all already on the NRA? But I can understand the advantages of having large rosters in organizations and the funds and the power that the funds wield.
I have another plan, and this plan I hope everyone does. This is an organization I want everyone to join. Please join Every Town Matters, or whatever that.
Every Town for Gun Violence?
We can infiltrate them from the inside. We just show up at their rallies like blithering idiots, sound retarded, scream at each other, get ignorant, and what do they call that? Like we're like subversion or something.
Infiltrate.
Infiltrate, and we could just destroy them from the inside.
I'm down with you because I'm all about subtle ways of getting your goal accomplished. However, instead of being blatant and just being scorned and possibly removed, perhaps even physically, what about going out there and raising a sign that's just a little bit off, that they don't necessarily realize it, and start a chant like, maybe we should all go home, or like little things that are subtly like, they have a good point there. They have a good point there.
I was just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I'll tell you this, though. If there was an organization called, like, commonsensegunlaws.com or something, right? commonsensegunlaws.org, why shouldn't we join and just show up and be like, we got common sense gun laws, too. Like, listen to my common sense gun laws. I want my carry permit, and I want it within 30 days.
Honestly, the only disadvantage I see with that is that you would be giving money to them, period. So if they have a free membership, why not? You should join them, in fact, because if you don't know what your opponent is doing or how they're training, then you're not preparing for the fight. You're just...
The only thing I'm scared of is bolstering their numbers, and then they can,
No, that's not a bad thing either. The same way I don't think it's necessary for us to necessarily show off all of our, all of how much muscle we have to flex. If we add to theirs, then...
I'm afraid you would need an infiltration course to teach people how to do that. Like, Recondo for infiltrating.
Well, we've been infiltrated by the
I think that's in the blood of the United States citizen. I think we got it all right. We've all seen enough movies. We know it's
common sense gun laws. I want my carry permit in 30 days. That's common sense. I've done my part. Anyway, I'm just reading the chat.
So we've been chatting for a bit. I'm gonna pull the brakes and do a 180 a bit. Go back to when DB was saying his stuff about the NRA originally, and one of the things you said was how great it would be if all these new gun owners would jump on board. But I think there's something we have to think about too, and that's the population distribution throughout generations in the country, because we've got that baby boom generation, which it's difficult, I think, for people that don't get taught history in school well, because a lot of us went to, I think most of us probably went to public school, and they make history like lame and boring, and they don't teach it to us very well, so none of us really got a great gist of it. We probably remember more from the little Saturday morning cartoon-like commercials about history than we do from history class, right? So I think that we need to think about that generation mass flowing through the country, through our society, and it's responsible for the tremendous burden that we've got in a lot of ways. I feel it's responsible for a lot of the ills of society, because not by intent but by results. We had a bunch of people that lived through World War I, and those same people lived through World War II. So we can't imagine. We haven't lived through a world war. We've lived through skirmishes that we cry and bitch and moan about as if they were world wars, when they're really happening in like little tiny areas of the country or world, and aren't that, they're not entire nations going to battle with all of their resources, right? And we had generations that lived through both of those wars. They have to have had such a drastically different view of everything. Those same generations saw, like my grandfather, he wasn't in both wars, but he was alive for World War II, and he was alive before we had airplanes, am I right? Or at least very beginnings of airplanes and then through the space shuttle, right? So these same people that lived through 2 world wars, had kids, and they were done with the Second World War. They were seeing improvements like frozen food all happened, right? Roads and stuff, cars and stuff. Everything. If you watch some of the shows on Netflix that go into the formation of our country, we don't think about that because we've lived after all that, and we've lived with those people as our parents. Well, what I'm getting at is that's a huge bulge in that population distribution or whatever that's called throughout, like, the generational population or whatever. Those people are going to die off is what I'm getting at. And they've made this big, like, change in the way we see things or the way we live our lives or whatever, the amount of resources we have to devote to stuff, both physically and informationally, they require a bunch of health care, so that changes the political debate to talk about health care, where we could be talking about something like freedom, right? So they've literally changed the world that we live in, and they're dying off. So when they die off, they're going to take things like their drug wars with them. They're going to take, we hope they're going to take their drug wars with them, their war on poverty, their war on all this stupid crap that they were down with, because their parents saw the horriblest shit in the world happen twice, right? And they said, we want to make sure our kids don't have to ever deal with this stuff. We want our kids to live in fairyland. And I know that I'm getting off topic here, but I think that's definitely something we have to think about if we scale it back to what we're talking about, gun rights and stuff. When these people go, not only are they taking some of the ills with them, but they're also some of our base, right? They're the people that still probably are okay with firearms ownership. Unfortunately, their children, us, had children and are having children now, and we're letting them be taught by these statists, right, that are telling the kids that you don't win or lose, competition's really not that good, the state can provide everything for you. And that's the danger I see, is that as these old people die off, and the NRA numbers might just drop to nothing once a bunch of old people kick the bucket. And these new people coming on, if they're like, join the NRA or not, who cares? That's my grandfather's grandfather. It's my grandfather's or my dad's grandfather's organization. Last thing I heard about it was something about how they're the KKK. Are they necessarily?
You're not actually expecting people to learn from history. I mean, they don't even know history. We just had the 70th anniversary of liberation of Auschwitz by the Red Army. How many people paid attention to that?
Right, and more people think that didn't even happen. It just didn't. It never even happened.
Well, I can tell you, my grandfather was a sapper with the Second Polish Corps. They were in Warsaw. My uncle was in Warsaw. My grandfather, when Germans first bombed it, and we're Jewish, so they had to get the hell out of there. And when they kind of refugees all the way to Kyrgyzstan, when the Second Polish Corps was formed from refugees, like under the Red Army, he fought on the Eastern Front as a sapper, the Second Polish Corps, all the way back to Poland. And it wasn't because he volunteered. He was in a concrete work factory where just everybody died because the conditions were so poor, and the only way not to die was to join the army. So, that must have been a different reality, fighting as a sapper, marching like 2,000 miles from Osh, Kyrgyzstan, and fighting all the way to Lublin. And he was at one of the camps when they liberated it. It's a smaller camp with only 70,000 victims, and like 1.1 million in Auschwitz. But so I just can't even imagine what it was like, and I can tell you he never talked about it. He was just, and he wasn't into guns at all. He was just, he didn't ever want to see a gun. He was just happy not to have people trying to kill him because he was Jewish. So.
Yeah, I had a grandfather that was in the war on my mom's side, and he was saying the same stuff. Like when he came back from the war, he had no interest in guns, had his belly full of guns. It was like a quote. And hey, what can you say? That's fine. A lot of people who were in war, they come back, they have no interest in guns and don't really feel any other way about it.
Yeah, but the people point this out, like Geos was saying about history, is that that's not what kids are into,
Yeah, I agree. It's just messed up. I mean, that whole thing, what I was just trying to say in the beginning, it really is the best of times. And the fact that these are the best of times, and there should be some sort of like joining, getting together, and fighting the impending attack. That you know it's coming. I mean, it might not be coming in 4 years or 8 years, but it'll be back. There'll be another attack, and we'll be wondering what happened to 9mm for 2 years, and and 22, and just the panic, and it's just a horrible way to, it's like a lot of people say, oh, it's just, you're just a jealous, or not jealous, a selfish person who's into your hobbies. This is a horrible hobby. If that's like this is a horrible hobby, because every few years it's like a mad scramble to like get magazines, get ammo. Like they're taking it from us. If this was golf, I'd never have to worry about like they're taking my golf balls. Like me and my golf buddies talking about, getting, buying balls. They're taking our golf balls away. I mean, it's just ridiculous, man. This is America, and the gun culture, whatever it is, it's just basically our rights. These are our rights to self-defense, and the tools that we need to have, all that stuff. And I'm not the best person to talk about it, but I'm just saying, like, it's not really like the greatest hobby in terms of like it's under attack every like 5 to 10 years. It's like it's coming. So how can we get together and try to and fight these attacks that are coming our way? Basically, is this why I like gun channels and why I like these channels.
Talking about new shooters, are they going to be as thick-skinned about these attacks, or are they just going to be apt to say, oh, they're going to come make these illegal? All right. They're just going to lay them down because they're just not, they haven't grown up with them.
I have no idea. I just feel like the people who came in this last wave, when I would go to the range, my range got so crazy that they were giving you those discs that light up and vibrate when your table's ready at like Ruby Tuesdays or whatever. And it was, the range time was, the wait for the range was horrible. There were so many new shooters. There's so many people were buying guns during that time, and I don't see them anymore. Like but now I go to the range and it's as dead as it was before. But those people who got in, they didn't realize that 9mm was $9 a box. They're used to paying $20 a box. They're used to 22 not being there. And then if the assault weapons ban came in and they actually got it through, those new gun owners would have just been used to 10-round magazines. Some of them just don't really care. They got theirs, and that's all that matters. It's
when I was a kid, I was into guitars and not guns. And the guy I used to have a guy that cut my hair who always was trying to get me to go shooting with him. So I went shooting once, and we went shooting his Mac 10s when they were still legal to buy them. And he was always trying to sell me Mac 10s. And I swear, I wish I would have bought some Mac 10s instead of like 10 guitars. It's been worth a lot more.
Yeah, but the only reason they're worth more is because of legislation. It's an artificial, situation.
Yeah, but I guess when you're younger, you're into different things.
Well,
we don't even have a range in Hawaii, so.
I think that's another part of it too. Like, as far as the new shooters go, we saw the NRA come out with their Colean Noir show and make an attempt to market differently, make an attempt to do PR differently. They did a lot of things differently, and a lot of the chats that we were in, a lot of the old guard, didn't like, oh, that doesn't appeal to me, or that's this, or that's that, or I feel like I'm watching a Mossberg commercial, or if I wanted to learn about cigars, I'd do something else, or whatever. And
maybe what we ought to do is make like a cable TV show that would be fun and people that would be interested, that isn't like sponsored by a gun company.
Well, yeah, but that's the whole problem, is where do you get that sponsorship from? In order to get that sponsorship, somebody has to take the point on the cross marketing. I'll give you a perfect example. Like DB was saying, there's a gun shop where the guy gives you a range coupon and this and that and that and this. Okay, that's great, that's nice. Okay, but pull it back to like where when I had my dealerships in New York, we had the community marketing book, the local businesses, the coupons in the local businesses. And I had gun stores and sporting stores and shooting ranges in there because they were part of my community and my local businesses. Now, did I get some crap from customers because of that? Absolutely. Obviously, not obviously, but ironically, it could be tracked by like model pretty coolly by car line. But that's my point is we have to be more accepting, and we have to be more willing to stand side by side with people, even within our own community or culture, that disagree with us. And like I said, the NRA takes some steps towards that with the Coley Noir thing, and most of, maybe it's just because of my age and my demographic, but most of the stuff that I heard about it is negative feedback, that like most of the people that are in NRA don't like the direction that took, and to me that's just ridiculous. I mean, I would be more comfortable with the NRA doing PR, public relations, and media, and getting completely out of politics whatsoever.
That wouldn't work because then we'd have a Democratic Senate. I mean, they dumped all their money into. Well, NRA dumped all their money into supporting all the Republican candidates in the last election. How much was spent in that one campaign? In North Carolina, was it like some
We're
ridiculous?
not going to suggest that the money that the NRA provides wins elections.
Money matters in elections a hell of a lot. I mean, it really does.
We're not going to get into that debate, I don't think, because that just seems like none of us can. Well, it's just a massive opinion, but I'm on the other side. I don't think the NRA is definitely throwing around money. I don't think the NRA is the sole reason why Republicans are in seats that Democrats aren't in.
No, but money matters. Money matters. Money matters for advertising.
But to suggest that if the NRA were to, because his suggestion was to say that the NRA, if they stopped doing it, then that would be better. And then you said, but then it would all become Democrats. That's not a cause and effect I can understand. It seems like a massive leap.
Well, I can tell. Here's my only personal experience with actually doing anything in politics was when I used to run a recording studio in Burbank. I had Ward Connerly do. Forget what the number of the proposition was. It was the one that basically Ward Connerly was this black guy who supported the proposition Prop 209 against racial set-asides and preferences for contracting and in college. And we did these radio spots, and they paid money. They had money for it, to buy lots of radio spots, and we did them, and they were basically discrimination is wrong, and but it was a lot of money that they spent, and the radio spots that I did with Arnold Steinberg, those won.
You're trying to illustrate that money can pay for media, which can influence an election, and no one's disagreeing with that. I'm just suggesting that the amount of money the NRA puts into any specific election is going to be a percentage of, not a majority of. And again, we're just going to be speculating on it, so let's keep going, because there's nobody wins if we're going to have a political thing about who spends more money, and then we get into party debate. I'm also trying to finish up with, or go back to something that Dano said about what DB said. So DB, you had said something like, we're at the best of times, and then Dano out in the Gun Channels chat said, in response, in order for these to be the best of times, the worst of times must be near by definition, and I didn't understand that logic jump either, so I asked him why, and he said the only way you can be on top of the mountain if you're about to start going down. And I understand what he's trying to say now, but I unfortunately agree with Yankee. I think that implies that you're at the top of the mountain. To be the best of times just means that it's better than you'd been before. That doesn't mean you're at the top of the pinnacle, or the pinnacle of the mountain. So you could easily be a third of the way up the mountain, or a quarter of the way up the mountain, or an eighth of the way up the mountain, and still be higher than you've ever been before, or better off than you've ever been before. And you could still have a hell of a lot of journey to go. And all that time you'll be better off than you had been, but that doesn't mean much if you still got a lot of journey to go. So that, I think, is something that the whole Every Second Matters thing's about. And I'm sorry if it's, if it sounds like I'm cutting you off, Volcano Squad, but again, it's not. When we started this thing, it wasn't to just let's have a 2 hours where we shake our fist at the sky and do, and complain about the way it is, because that doesn't accomplish much more than waste a bunch of time. So the whole concept here is to bring ideas to the floor and then to do some sort of progress. Now, I'm going to try this year to do more interviews. It's looking like I might want to have 3. I had 2 people scheduled for today, and both of them, one had computer problems, the other one just didn't respond. It sounds like I'll try to have 3 then going into next month, so that we'll be sure to have an actual representative from a nonprofit organization. But we've been talking about NRA because the subject got off on it. However, what we're really talking about on Every Second Matters is the Second Amendment. And I want to jump back, just in the sake of brevity, since we're kind of going on here without, just kind of wandering. Zotz, I don't know how to say that, Zotzi, I guess. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Said quite a while ago now, more than an hour ago, a great comment that I think is worthy of discussion while we're still on air. So there used to be, this is the comment, there used to be the businesses that wanted to discriminate against other civil rights. When we were talking about, I think we were talking about the 60s or something back then. I don't know what we were talking about. It was a while ago. But here's the point. Not wanting minorities free from their business. The Second Amendment is a civil right. So in other words, I forget what exactly we were talking about back then, but the point is that looking at the Second Amendment as a civil right, that's something that I haven't seen used enough or used at all. When is it brought up that this is our civil right? Now, maybe we didn't bring it up because it just never had been a tactic, but now, in the modern day 2015, it's been a tactic for all kinds of strides subsets of society have made. And so going forward here, what do we think about that angle? Are there any organizations that are going out there? Have you guys seen evidence of us using that? This is our civil right. Leave us alone. The government doesn't have a right to go after our civil right. And then we can attack the Rosie O'Donnells out there. We can attack them in the media as being bigots, racists, wanting to discriminate in our civil rights.
They use it in court, obviously, but I don't think you have to do it without stepping on Martin Luther King's toes. You have to respect that, especially if you're going to use that. So you're going to have to figure out a way to do that. I'm not sure how.
And I think Dan was saying, to reply to what I was saying before, that he's saying it can be good times, but not the best of times. But I'd still say you can be better than you've ever been and just not be done. Still have more to go. I don't know. It's tough when we're trying to talk through chats too. You might be trying to think of something else there. So, anything else with?
If you want to talk about the Ninth Circuit Court cases, I could talk about those.
And that's.
Bruder Richards in the magazine case, Sunnyvale, 30-round mag case, confiscatory ban that they have pending.
What are we talking about? This is somebody that got prosecuted for having a magazine with more rounds in it than they're allowed to have, or something?
Now, the city of Sunnyvale, California, passed a confiscatory ban on 30-round mags or anything over 10 rounds. And that means if you used to own one, you have to turn it in. And so there's a court case that's the Ninth Circuit, Federal Circuit Appeals Court, the same Peruta Court, but not the same judges. They heard that. I mean, I posted the oral arguments. I like listening to the courtroom arguments, by the lawyers, because that's when the case is submitted. And I did post that on my website, but it's available from the Ninth District Court too. And but yeah, it's basically if the Sun City, Sunnyvale passed a confiscatory ban, and a bunch of gun owners, are fighting it, and it's basically it's been submitted with the oral argument to the Ninth Circuit Federal Appeals Court, and so that was in November 14th, and the only thing that happened today was they had the so we're going to wait on that one, and today they had with regard to the Peruta case and the subordinate cases, which are which is Yolo County, Sheriff Prieta, that was the
We're
carry
talking a lot of
ban.
detail, but I guess I'm still not clear. We're talking about that California put a ban on the number of rounds, and then somebody's taken that to the circuit court. So that's the highest level of federal court before the Supreme Court?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's challenging California's law, getting into broad strokes. That's basically the beginnings of taking the California's law on magazine capacity to the Supreme Court, which is what we need to then set precedent so that other states' laws can be challenged?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and you're saying that that's made progress?
Yes, the case has been submitted to the Federal Circuit Court. I posted, I don't know how long it is. Yeah, it's been submitted to the Ninth. There's an oral argument for it on the Ninth Circuit Court. To get it from their website, or it's on my YouTube page too.
Well, I'm familiar with like concepts there, but like time frames and stuff I'm not savvy with. So are we talking now that you say it's been submitted, are we months away, weeks away, years away, or what kind of time frames are we talking before we have a decision that other states might be able to use?
There's 3 judges, and it's up to them. But everything else has been done, because I think the case was started like in 2013 or 2012, and it's completed, and everything has been submitted, and all the arguments have been made. And I posted the oral argument at the very end. That's the last thing they do, is do the oral argument, and so that's been. You listen to it. She has the girl who's arguing for, basically they're saying that she does a good argument saying that that it is owning a magazine is covered by the Second Amendment, and which the underlying court said agreed that yes, owning a magazine is covered by the Second Amendment, and so but then it's contradicted by the fact that that same circuit court judge banned these magazines. And it's a confiscatory ban. It's not grandfathered. You have to turn them in. So yeah, that's going before. I mean, you just have to wait for 3 judges to make up their mind, basically. So on that one, who knows how long that'll take. But, so that's the ban on magazines. And yeah, these are the precedent-setting cases, that people are referring to. And so when, like, if I can jump to the Kerry one, which is the Prude and Richards case, the only thing that happened today, I'm only going to mention it because it happened today, is there was like a procedural thing where they lifted a stay on the Richards Yolo County subordinate case, the Peruta case, on the stay. They lifted the stay on the en banc review, and I think they're going to tie the 2 cases together as far as an en banc review, and whether that one's going to go to SCOTUS, and whether that has something to do with the 2 organizations arguing, the 2 lawyers, one for the Alan Gura and the NRA lawyer. So that was tied into your different organizations thing, as far as what different organizations working against each other, who's going to argue before the Supreme Court. I think that pretty much covers it for today on court news.
Now, were you having to go dig this up, or are you grabbing this from some like feed that somebody's putting out?
Yeah, I always check in, every couple of days on either Firing Lines. It wasn't on the Firing Lines forum, which it wasn't on, and the calguns.net website, which had that little blurb today, and they usually have links to the court and McKellar Lawyers too. Is that another website? I mean, I could give you the links in chat or email them to you if you want them later, but.
I'm not asking for specific links necessarily as much as for the people that are listening to get an idea of what kind of work goes into this. In other words, it's not as though we've got a national organization who's tasked themselves with discovering all the pertinent legislation and then like giving us a running scroll for each state, like what's going on. We don't have that, and I don't know if it's that obviously nobody's said we shouldn't have that. It's just that I don't think there's ever been somebody with enough resources to create that for any length of time. I know people have tried and done things to the best of their abilities, but just the nature of technology and the way things are, things change. What I would have built back a long time ago for AOL ain't going to work anymore on a smartphone, right? So, things will change. So I can personally remember putting together lists that are in a format that just, is on a server that just doesn't exist anymore. So to have a maintained current inventory of all the pending stuff just isn't out there. And that's one of the points of this whole concept, this whole organization of getting together and talking about this stuff is maybe shining a light on what we're lacking, so that ambitious people or smart people or people that are chomping at the bit to try to do something, and they got more time and energy and know-how than they got cash, which is, I think, a lot of us, lets them know where we're lacking. And I just, like I say, I'm not necessarily going to look at all those links because I've only got so much time in my life too, but I want just people to realize that you had to go out and spend some time to go find those. Sure, you might have been able to pick it up off the feed of a large forum, but you had to spend time figuring out that that's the best source for those kind of things, and then you monitor it, and then you know that this chat is going on and you brought it so that you can let people know, and that's obviously individual effort that's bringing that out. We only have 44 people watching live. We've got, 28 people over at Gun Channels as well, so probably a couple of dozen people from a couple of different sources watching us as we speak live, and then who knows how many people are going to hear this in the future. Probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people will hear this, or more likely thousands of people. But still, they might have conversations at the lunchtime about some weird podcast they heard where they did you know that the Ninth Circuit Court is doing this? So I don't know where I'm going with that, except to say that's sort of the whole point of what we're doing here. It's non-scripted, obviously. It's just get together so that we keep the conversation going. And I don't know, you said that was it with kind of the summary of what's been happening.
For the Ninth Circuit, correct. Yeah,
in the Ninth Circuit. Who knows what's going on in the other ones, because we don't have these things. So maybe if that's something that somebody's out there thinking, wow, there's so many gun channels on YouTube, or there's so many podcasts already. Well, I'm not aware of one that is like the watchdog for that kind of stuff. Even the nonprofit organizations, we already talked about it, that are on our side and that every day get up and work towards the better, the greater good. They can only do what they can carry. You can only carry so much in a bucket. We need a lot of people with a lot of buckets out there, and our effort here is just to help rebroadcast, help amplify that type of stuff. So again, if we think of ourselves as, which we are, all of us, whether we like to acknowledge it or not, we're all citizen soldiers. It doesn't necessarily mean we all have to pick up a musket, but we all better be ready to pick up a pen for our First Amendment to maintain our freedom. I mean, no matter if you're pro-gun or anti-gun, in this country, that you're pro First Amendment, right? And you're pro the government isn't going to step on my throat. And you don't have to be violent. There's all kinds of people that do things non-violently, but they should be on our side too, because this is really a civil rights thing. Well, that's the way we're phrasing it now, but we all know this is really a freedom thing, that this is manipulated to look like it's our hobby and that we're extremists who are violent or however they want to degrade.
Well, all these successful lawsuits are for deprivation of civil rights.
That's a good point. And it's not going to be focused on by the major media, because again, they've got agendas that are driven. If it's just to keep the tennis game going, or if it's a legitimate fear of guns, or if it's a fear of free people, or if it's just again to keep the status quo the way it is. We wake up and we fight guns. We don't know why. We just do it. They don't maybe have a reason, but
well, you brought up something real interesting that I want to touch on when you said the First Amendment. we like to talk about the NRA, the gun owners versus the non-gun owners, the FUDs against black rifles, whatever. If you actually look, it's not just the Second Amendment and I don't particularly feel it's a civil right. I think it's a natural right, but that's neither here nor there. The First Amendment, okay, since the Patriot Act thing, we now have free speech zones. Okay, we now have no free speech within certain distances of politicians making public appearances. We have all kinds of local laws that are, once again, these fear-based, emotional, knee-jerk reactions to media that put these laws in place that are doing the same thing to the First Amendment that they're doing to the Second Amendment. And what was more recently, I forget where it was. It just happened I just heard about it in the last couple of days. One of the state Supreme Courts declared that a law enforcement officer's ignorance of the law does not necessarily now remove the effectiveness of the results of that. Meaning, if a cop had no right to search your car, but he searched your car and he just said he misunderstood the law, it used to be that the search results get thrown out. Now they don't anymore. They can be kept in evidence. Okay, so there's actually a ruling made that the ignorance of the law on behalf of the law enforcement officer is not an excuse, but for us it's not. Okay, so there goes
a good way to seize guns if they search your car, find a gun, and then say, "Well, this is evidence for."
Well, more than that, it'll let them take any property. So
there goes an assault on the Fourth Amendment. So
well, okay, so that was at what level though? I've heard that story too. What level?
State. But gee, this is where this stuff all happens. It's state. Have you taken a look at what the New York SAFE Act and SAFE Act 2 actually entail?
I don't even like anyone in New York. But go ahead.
If you actually tried to pass the SAFE Act federally, that would probably spark the revolution that everybody wants. Okay, that's how barbaric that thing is. But yet they got it through in New York, and
everybody that wants a revolution. We had a revolution once, and it worked. I don't need a revolution.
Yeah, we had a vote, and they lost the election, and we have a Republican Congress now. So that's our revolution. At least last one. We'll have another election.
My point is that this stuff's much easier to get through on a state level, and when you have enough states that are seeing somewhat eye to eye, then bringing the rest of the pieces together becomes easier.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Just like constitutional carry at the state level is going to eventually spread that way, the same way that whatever you call regular CCW. Dang, I can't think of the term.
CHL?
Shall issue or whatever.
Oh.
So just the same way that, it's the same way that shall issue spread to pretty much every state. So yeah, I understand that that's a facility for the bad, but that's not a reason to tear the system down. That's just another reason why we always need to be vigilant.
I'm not talking about tearing the system down. What I'm talking about is we're picking the Second Amendment because that's our thing. Okay, and we have discussions about how, as Second Amendment people, we have a hard time seeing eye to eye. My point is, we have other allies who have other amendments that are priorities to them.
No, perfect. Yeah, we should be allies with the Fourth Amendment advocates and the First Amendment advocates and so on, is what you're saying.
Right, but now and this is just a hypothetical example, okay? As a gun owner, if you want to get involved in that whole Fourth Amendment thing, then what's the first thing you run into is all those anti-law enforcement, all the people who want, no cops, no law enforcement, no this, the police are all corrupt, the laws are corrupt, and then you have to deal with all that. And that's what I mean is if we cast a wider net, we may be able to find people who have personal rights amendments that they're as passionate about as we are about the Second Amendment, and
Yeah.
that they're more easily able to overlook our petty differences to come together on, like, okay, so maybe we're not going to come on the first or the second, but you know what? The Bill of freaking Rights. Okay, that's what I want to support. I want to support the Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
You know,
the enemy to my enemy. It's the same thing. The enemy in both cases is abuse of big government. So
right. You telling me I can only have 10 rounds in my magazine is no different than you telling me that I'm allowed to have free speech as long as I am in a pen over here within a certain number of feet from the political display that I want to talk against.
Oh, that's excellent. Now I'm seeing all kinds of little memes in my head here with parallels there. Because yeah, that's excellent. And even if they don't want to necessarily join up with us because of whatever differences or just a lack of resources or whatever, then we can easily draw parallels to that. And that's, I don't think I've seen much. Now that I'm trying to think, I haven't seen many people use that strategy.
And we're talking like Yankee had mentioned it in the chat room before, and a couple of people have, I have no problem with gay marriage. I don't have a problem with gay marriage either. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I don't care. But once again, what is an organization? What does their grassroots look like? Where are they making their best inroads that we can help them and they can help us? And where I think this becomes more important is actually a point that you made a lot earlier, is about going on the offensive to defend the Bill of Rights and the amendments as they stand. Okay, that's going to take a lot of money. Okay, that's going to be a very offensive thing. It's going to take a long time. It's a completely different thing than defending yourself from these attacks, like from the Everytown for Gun Safety thing. When you're being attacked, it becomes easy to get members. It becomes easy to get donations. It becomes easy when somebody feels like they're being taken, something's being taken away from them. It gets relatively easy to spur them into whatever action you want to spur them on. Okay, but now we're talking about getting together as an independent action on a completely offensive scale. And I don't think that organization, if it should exist, I don't think that organization should be tasked with keeping track of the bills and going in and doing some of the things that are being done now. I think it should be an isolated thing of this is the Bill of Rights. These are the amendments to the Constitution. These are the interpretations, and these are what we're going to argue on a completely offensive basis. That if your amendment's the first or the fourth or the second, okay, we're on the same page.
They're not in here, so I'm just watching the conversation between Dano and Antonio. They're saying that about the ACLU. I guess I'm very narrowly, like, I only look at gun stuff. So what is ACLU's big deal? Why are they so controversial? What do they do? They don't touch guns very much because they don't come into
American
my
Civil Liberties Union. They got a lot of lawyers.
Right, but I thought they're just like advocates of freedom, no?
Well, I guess they're more geared on some rights than others,
Yeah, they're not exactly pro-gun at all. I wouldn't consider them pro-gun at all.
Okay. Are they anti-gun, though? Wouldn't they be? Well, I don't know. I guess what they're saying is we're questioning, should we be advocates of the ACLU? Is that something we want to distance ourselves as gun owners from?
And
the liberal organization.
They're for civil liberties, but I don't think they're pro-gun, so we can call them up on speakerphone tomorrow.
So you mean they're for some civil liberties? They're not blindly for our civil rights kind of thing. They're agenda driven.
Exactly. Like the Southern Poverty Law Center, any of these, you can compare them to political action committees. You can put whatever frosting you want on the cake. The cake is still what it is. So these guys are like, oh yeah, we're for American civil liberties, but only the ones that we think you should have.
Well, the good thing about the ACLU...
This is something that... Okay, go ahead, sorry.
The good thing about the ACLU is that when they jump in with, like, everything. That they're going to hit you with, they'll bury the other side with, grease that's like 10 miles high. You know, when they jump in, and they know how to do that. So that's all I want to say. Yeah.
Well, I guess this is fairly new to me. I mean, my experience with ACLU, I thought was like they would defend somebody. If somebody was like burning a flag and got arrested, they would defend the guy burning the flag, right? They're like, I thought they were just always for freedom. And I know they always get like a bad connotation from almost everybody because I thought they were like blindly always for freedom. So I guess I have a misunderstanding of them. But since this is new to me, and I'm never going to say I'm politically active or anything. I like say I'm a very one-issue person, but if that's new to me, then there's got to be other people that's new topic to. Is there something we can do by illustrating or bringing light to the fact what you guys just said, that there's all these organizations that claim to be pro-civil rights except for guns? Why are guns not a civil right all of a sudden? Is there any way we can poke that wound or that thing that they probably are not trying to illuminate, right? They're probably all like, hey, we're all for rights, and then they don't get asked by their population, their members, why not Second Amendment rights, right? So if we're the guy saying why not Second Amendment rights, every time they're doing I don't know what they do. Let's say they're like PETA, though, and they get up and they say fur coats are bad, and then we're the guy in the audience saying, how come you're for all civil rights except for the civil right to own a firearm? Would that be a strategy, or is that...
They would probably give you a lawyer's answer, which is just refer you to the NRA because that's what they do. You know, I mean, they don't specialize in gun rights.
I mean, I don't expect the guy on the platform at that point to, you know, somehow go, oh, you're right, and like change policy of the organization. I'm just saying, would that be a way that we could poke at them? The same way, I guess, the same way they figure throwing red paint at, and I'm just throwing them in with PETA because that's one I'm more familiar with, but they figure that throwing red paint on somebody with a coat, sure, that's not going to stop everyone from owning coats, but it makes a point, right? It's something out there that gets it in the news, right? Would that be something that would get in the news, or would they just like ignore it and it'd be pointless? Or would that be a way to
trying to predict what the NRA would do? I mean, I could ask. I actually know a friend of a very close family member has a cousin that's in one of the chief lawyers of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I could ask them what their opinion is, but she's recovering from a medical condition, so I need to wait like a month before I can do that. But you know, it's like the NRA, you know, trying to get them to do something. They're big organizations. So you need to steer them from within, I would think.
And to get back to your point, G, I think it would be a good exercise for a lot of people to actually dig deeper into some of the quote-unquote watchdog organizations that they think got their back. It's like the ACLU, for instance, the American Civil Liberties Union. The title's all well and good, fine, except that they decide what civil liberty that you're entitled to and what they're going to help you with. Okay, so you know, as far as track records go, you know, if you're a single issue voter or political personality, like you said, then it's not just a matter of seeing civil liberties. It's a matter of saying, okay, have they had any cases, any support, any statements, any briefs whereby they were anti-Second Amendment? Okay, now by default, if they're, but what we're talking about here, if they're anti any amendment, then we don't want them on board. Okay, because you're talking about now that big global thing of getting together across amendments with like-minded people that no matter what their particular pet liberty is, they want to preserve it.
And they're not about to stab you in the back or cut you loose as soon as it suits them.
Right.
They're big like free speech people and stuff.
Well, I guess I'm going to see if PayPal will let me take back that big donation I made, I guess. Sorry about that.
I think it's more also an issue of like they're, you know, lawyers are specialists in specific areas of the law, you know, and they might not be so good on, and all civil rights are not defended the same way, I guess. Different precedents.
Well, no, we have a unique instance in that our right that we're particularly attached to can also be regulated by in the Interstate Commerce Clause. I mean, we have the only amendment that's actually attached to a physical device, piece of equipment, machinery type of thing. You know, the First Amendment doesn't say you can't have a typewriter or a pen.
Yeah, I mean that's what the court case we were talking about is that when in the magazine capacity case where they're saying that the judge, the circuit court judge, the lower circuit court judge recognized that okay, this magazine is covered by the Second Amendment, but we're going to ban it anyway because they want and it just completely contradicts what he just said like 5 words ago, you know.
But to them, it doesn't contradict it, and that's the part that I can't fit in my brain because it's the easiest argument to make in the world. Okay, if one of the arguments the anti-gunners like to make is that they had muskets when they wrote the Second Amendment, so we shouldn't have black rifles now. Okay, put that down as your argument, and then I say you should have a quill pen and an ink jar, and you can't have a computer, and they'll argue that with you. There is no argument there. Okay, the argument doesn't exist. Yet these people pick up that argument, and this is what ends up in our courtrooms.
Well, I think we're going to win a lot of these Ninth Circuit court cases, you know, and get to SCOTUS, and then God only knows what will happen. It makes it interesting, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I bring this up at every chat, but when I was a teenager, the Second Amendment didn't apply to us. Like from I'd say a popular majority of politicians and just talking heads and pundits and all that stuff. In the 90s, like the Second Amendment was about a militia and a well-regulated militia, and they argued that all the time until Heller, which was what, like 07, 2007, 2008? So, I mean, my generation, I know some of them will pick up from that. I've heard the Rosie O'Donnell argument of like, well, they had muskets back then, so I'm okay with you having a musket. But it was even more hardcore back when I was like, a teenager. It was more like, it doesn't even apply to you. Like you're just a citizen. It applies to the militia, and I've heard everyone say that.
That was an argument for a while.
And I think it was their argument until that was such a defeat for them. I mean, what a huge defeat for those people. To then they have to jump to, well, it applied to muskets, because that was something they never even bothered to get to. That argument, like, well,
that's interesting. I think that you bring up an interesting aspect of this, that the debate has been going on for a long time, and it should be technically documented, through articles and position statements and stuff that had been in, especially as you go back in time. It had to be in a magazine, a physical, periodical. It had to be, maybe a newspaper, which are a lot of times photos, whatever, microfilmed or whatever, so they physically exist. And I was going to say that that's a couple of things. One, it would be interesting for somebody to go back and look at the history of the anti-gun positions throughout time, because they have changed. And then it would be interesting to see if the reason they've changed is because, my first inclination was to say it's because they were able back in the day to manipulate the system more. Again, when we jump back to when we were little kids, where did we get our information from? Magazine articles, period. That was it. There was never anything in the newspaper about guns unless it was about a bill, like a legal action that was taking place, or a bad news, crime or whatever. There was nothing ever about guns. Then there was nothing on TV ever about guns unless, again, it was a negative news article, news piece. And then we got everything from periodicals, and that might be from something like Time magazine, again, if there was a national legislation happening, or more likely, and almost always, from like Guns and Ammo or the NRA magazine, which were way more important back then, because that's, like I said, that was our lifeblood. That's where we got what we consider, we called those current events back then, because we were used to books, like carvings in fucking stone, and then magazines were light speed for us. And then what? I guess there were actually newsletters back in the day. I can remember a few newsletters. Like you'd go to a gun show and somebody had started a newsletter, and they would like Xerox or Ditto machine, like, a little flyer, and they would send that to you in the regular mail, and it might be more the tinfoil hat stuff, or it might, I can remember prepper stuff like that back in the day. So there were,
I would love to have had that stuff.
Well, Oh, I should do a video. I've got a really cool
No,
thing
because
for that.
that's where I heard about like all the what was that society? I
Well, let
forgot.
me keep
The
going with that.
yeah,
So,
go ahead, keep going.
they were able to use that technology against us. They could basically, in other words, come out and say whatever the F they wanted in the media, the major media, and then it took us time to see that, react to it, decide to do research, do the research, pay for the research, take the time to do the research, accumulate the research, write it up, try to publish it in something, or maybe your own newsletter, right? And then that was your rebuttal. That had to affect the back and forth compared to fast forward to now where somebody tweets something or James Yeager says something and hundreds of people, if not thousands or tens of thousands of people can react to it in the freaking moment, right? So, you know what I'm saying? That I think it would be awesome to see somebody focus on that perspective of it, because there has to be something to learn from that. Again, did that change in their attack? Was that parrying our defense? Was it going after our vulnerabilities? Did they have somebody behind them with some intent? And I'm going to get tinfoil hat here. I think that some of this stuff all happened in 1968. Was that a coincidence that we're in the middle of the effing Cold War? Okay, so that's all I'm saying, is that when you've got half of the it's kind of emotional, when you got half of the planet against you, do you seriously think that doesn't influence what goes on in this country?
Well,
Like,
if
we
you're
have the
talking
resources of entire countries that wanted to see us crumble, and then we look at what happened in our country and we go, wow, we're on an isolated iceberg of, like, in the middle of nowhere, where no outside influences have affected the legislation that changed us from walking to school with lever actions over our shoulder, throwing them in our lockers and going hunting on the way home, or to the point where our kids don't even have scores in school. So I'm not going to get too tinfoil hat, but all I'm saying is, that things change over time, and I think we can learn a lot from that. And if the fight seems like it had a lot of outside influence, that might be justification for my theory there. Or if it doesn't, then maybe I can kill that theory already and quit bringing it up. But I'm thinking
No.
it would be neat to see that, but then it would also be neat to see how technology has influenced that back and forth, so that at least, I think that we learn a lot by seeing the history of what we've done, so that we don't repeat it, but then we can also anticipate, right? We can figure out what their next move is going to be, so we flank them or do whatever we need to do.
You can
the
most
year you
definitely go with a bigger tinfoil hat there. That's not a problem, because take one step back from what you've just described and look at it this way. Let's consider that, like, part of our hobby is marksmanship, part of our hobby may be reloading, it's gear, it's this and that. Well, let's say that part of our hobby also mandated is being in this room, in this position today, having to defend what we consider to be an unalienable right. Okay, so here we are today arguing the merits of the battle and strategy over the society that we're in today. Now take it back to when you put your tinfoil hat on. Okay, coming out of 2 world wars, coming out of Korea and Vietnam, we have the baby boomers and we have the Cold War. And what's the big thing from the 50s? Leisure time, leisure time, leisure time. Every single commercial, every meme that there was in the 50s was that technology and victory at the level that we experienced in this century were going to give us more leisure time than ever. Now you describe that technological or communicatory time lag. From I remember some of the old prepper newsletters. They're awesome hand-drawn little diagrams people did. They put tons of effort into Xeroxing those things.
Yep.
Okay, and we had that delay, and that delay is now gone now. Okay, where we can move 1 billion people with what you said, a James Yeager tweet. But here's my devil's advocate thing. What good is moving 10 million people in 5 million directions? Maybe back then, the social structure, the Cold War, the conditions that we were living in, and the propaganda that was being painted to us led us here. It led us to the nanny state. It led us to the government, letting the government tell us what to do instead of us telling the government what we want. It led us to being to this condition of placation that we find ourselves in. Okay, so now we have all these advances in timing and technology and this and that, but what's the one thing that we've seen? We can move more fish quicker, but we can't get the school to go in like one or two directions even.
No, I think it's more like, to go back to the 60s, the problem is if like if you start doing, heroin, you're going to start to need to do more and more and more. People are just burned out. I mean, it has limited, diminishing returns I think social media has.
So basically, when you're saying the idea that if you can reach 1 million people, they're going to get numb to getting reached.
Well, if they're going to get numb to the same message over and over, I mean.
For sure. But that's also, that's just, again, growing pains of new media, figuring things out. They figure out what commercials work, and then as soon as they figure it out, color TV happens. Things change.
So what we need is an advertising agency for guns. And that's not the NRA, it's something else.
Dude, seriously, that leads me into what I was going to...
Public relations.
Seriously. So, yeah, that's where I was going. So, I don't know if I don't think we talked about this in the last Every Second Matters, but we talked about it in some chat I was in somewhere. I don't keep track of them anymore, so I'm in too many of them. But the concept that, we need a marketing person, right? We need somebody who can sell, our Coke over their Pepsi.
Crack the red book open, the advertising agency red book. You just need to find a friendly agent. Well,
I don't think they need to be friendly. I think that they're whores, right? And all they need to do is
they
want
are.
money,
I can personally tell you that all advertising agency people are whores. I guarantee.
Well, that's all I'm saying. So, and I don't think necessarily. Well, obviously, we're not talking us because we don't do anything with money here. We're just talking about it, and that's all we're doing is trying to keep people talking about it all the time and encourage people to talk to others. But one of the things we could talk about is something that, like, I'm trying to get to, is that a topic that came up was, this, like, how do we get PR for our cause, right? And what is PR, right? You can try, you can pay for advertising, which is pushing it out there, but I think the subtle type of manipulation, or at least the subtle type of change that you could call manipulation, or you could call the effect of prodding. I mean, I don't know if it necessarily has to have the connotation of being evil or something, but to affect change, you make it popular, you make it cool or whatever, and that's where we were talking about making some entertainment, some stuff that's like by pro-gun entertainment or entertainers, pro-gun directors, and it's something with either a positive firearms message or just having firearms in it in such a way that it's still a popular movie, but the firearms are subtly taken out of, like I was talking about earlier, like this, hyper reality mode where they're always violent or they're always dangerous or they're always like, the music has to come up because there's tension in the air because a gun is in the scene. Anyway, I was getting at, is that a way to do it?
We're talking about product placement and social in media. That's what we're talking about. It's like they did for cigarettes. They used to pay actors to smoke cigarettes. Same thing again.
Yeah, like, oh, here I am cleaning my Ruger or whatever, and I'm putting that away because we're talking about something else in the show. But and then I was thinking, is there some way to do, a pro-gun thing on Kickstarter in a crowdsourcing or whatever, in some sort of crowdsourcing, whatever kind of way, where you get the people together the same way they engineer any successful thing, where somebody just comes up with the idea but doesn't have any of the skills or resources to complete it, right?
No, I think you need deep pockets to just dump money into it to get it done.
Well, that's a way to do it, but I'm suggesting that I've seen all kinds of neat things on Kickstarter specifically, and I suspect on all the other individual ones, and now there's this one called Twist Rate, which is gun-friendly. And I suspect that, again, not only can you create the funds by getting $1 from 1 million people, it's still $1 million, as opposed to trying to find that one guy who exists, that might exist, that has $1 million to just drop on it. And I'm not saying you can't do both, because then you'd have $2 million. But what I'm also suggesting is, besides accumulating a large pile of cash to do the project, you could also accumulate all the talent, all the people you need to do it. And I don't even want to be involved except for the concept, but I'm just saying, if that happened, right, and it became popular, that people will crowdsource what they want, as opposed to sitting there and accepting what's given to them and just replying with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, commenting on what's given. Instead, decide what you'd like to see. And if that happened and we started seeing all kinds, could you just think of the diversity of the podcasts that are out there, or maybe the blogs or the YouTube channels or whatever the media is that you like to experience gun entertainment or whatever in. Think of the diversity. And if there was that same diversity in media with firearms, we'd see stuff that was, down and gritty about crime in the streets, and we'd see stuff that's like funny, and we'd see stuff that's, all over the board, all over the spectrum. And if those kind of movies were out there, and then, just the law of averages, you get enough movies out there that are pro anything, and eventually somebody's going to go, that's a great movie. Oh, it also happens to be pro-gun. That's a great drama or whatever. That movie has such a great message. Oh, it's also pro-gun. And isn't that a way to affect change? Obviously, we don't have some giant guiding force behind it other than the will of a few people to suggest it and then maybe try to encourage it somehow.
Well, I think it's a good way, except for I think we would have to be careful about, you were saying product placement. I think product placement has worked against us negatively thus far, because what our opposition has done is, in a large effect, removed the implement from the personality and then created a whole bunch of stereotypical personalities, the gun bubbas, the gun bunnies, the whatever. And once again, we're back in the what do you call it? The war of public opinion. Okay. Again, one of the newer things, or the fresher breaths on the NRA, and I think this is something that we need to take charge of as people, okay, is to get away from the gear, to get away from the guns, to get away from the spotlight on the gun, like you were saying before, G. It's no different than a hammer or a screwdriver. And what is the personality of the person who shoots recreationally, who hunts, who this, who that? How does it make you a better person? How does it make you spend more time with your family? Women and guns, self-defense, does it make you safer? How has it affected your the rest of your life? I think the focus is too much on the chunk of plastic and iron and metal, and the fact that these people have woven this magic spell whereby all of these little talismans are evil no matter who's holding it. And I think that's one of the things that we should focus on getting away from.
Well, I think it's like, it kind of reminds me what you said about like the Planet of the Apes, where they have that scene where everybody's worshiping a nuclear weapon or something, So I don't know what the right answer is. It's too confusing.
Well, I guess we won't solve it tonight then, but hopefully we move the ball a little bit further. That's all it's really about. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if we move the ball, in my mind. I think as long as we keep the ball in motion, then it's ready to pick up and throw in the direction we might need it, when we need it, right? And it's all about sparking ideas and like I say, keeping the pipes clear. So it's gone back and forth, but this time I'm going to go ahead and end it. I don't know how long we've been going, but it's been going for a while. I've noticed the numbers have dropped a bit, but I do appreciate everybody who's watched this live. Definitely appreciate you guys that jumped in. Try to keep a couple of seats open for new people that are interested. I've been trying to do, mention it in some of my videos when I do like the video blogs or whatever. I figure if somebody's sticking around to watch me blab about my opinion about something, then that might be the kind of person that's interested in listen to us blab our opinions about stuff. And I also, whenever we do the patches, whenever we sell the patches, we always throw a bunch of cards in there, some business cards that I think they're available. I'll have to go double check that. I think you can download the image or whatever, or feel free to make your own, that are basically business cards that are the same concept as the patch or the shirt. Has the logo on it, just where you can just drop it maybe in somebody's box, and then it makes them think, or you can give it to somebody at a range or something, and just kind of keep the concept of keeping the conversation going, so that they can't sneak up on us. I also put them in, and everything else I sell. So, if I sell a patch that's some other design or something else, then I always try to throw some Every Second Matters cards in there. And that's just something I do. I know some gun shops have printed the cards up and just have them on the counter. And again, same concept. Somebody comes in and says, "What is this?" Take a few of them, pass them around. I don't know if you've got ideas on ways to, that have worked for you to get the conversation started, maybe sticking them at a shooting range or something, to get them around. That's I don't know. That's part of the concept. I guess I was thanking everybody, so thank you guys for showing up and participating. We're going to try to keep it, again, more organized for having some guests and stuff, but as time permits, we'll definitely keep inviting them, and maybe I don't know if we should go to a format where we record this, where it's more convenient for the guest, and then just play it on the evening of the second. We would probably still get a similar thing going. What we would lack is the reaction to the live comments as they're going. We'll see as time goes on what happens with that. If you've got suggestions or whatever, feel free to email them in, leave them in gun channels or on our YouTube channels, and we'll take a look at them. So until then, I want to thank everybody for watching, and thanks for keeping the conversation going.
And thanks for having us.
Aloha, thank you.